But we're starting with this absolutely beautiful 1929 Packard 633 Roadster. It's owned by Tim Schaefer. He's from South Lyon. Tim, how long have you owned this car?
5 years.
Where did you find it?
Boca Raton, Florida.
Lucky you. Well, we're going to toss it to the guys and let them tell the folks about your car.
So a little background on Packard first. It started in 1899 in Warren, Ohio. Moved here to Detroit on East Grand Boulevard in 1903. Started its real dominance in the luxury car market with the Twin Six in 1915, the Straight Eight of 1925. By the late 20s, they had a dominant position in the luxury car market, and that's pretty well exhibited here by this particular car. By 1929, Packard was exclusively 8-cylinder. They had dropped their volume car, the 6-cylinder, but fortunately the new low-priced 8-cylinder made up for it. This is a standard 8.6 series. It has a 320 cubic inch straight 8, 9-main bearing engine. 17,633s were built that year out of a total production of 55,000, which in fact was their record up to that time and would last until 1937. So, very nice car, and thank you for bringing it.
Pull her ahead, sir. Thank you very much for bringing your car. Let's see your window card, dear. That's okay, just hand it to me. We've got a 1931 Packard 463 chassis 826 sedan. It's owned by Carol and Calvin Chen. They're from Westland, Michigan. I love the color. Is this an original color?
We bought it with this color in
72. You've owned it since then. Okay, guys.
So this car has been here many shows, and it's always a welcome participant. While this was Packard's lead-in offering in 1931, you can see it was still a very impressive car. It's a 127.5-inch wheelbase, has such features as Beezer chassis lubrication. Over the year, because of the Depression, they continually reduced the price of the car. It started out at $23.85, eventually got down to $18.85. They built 6,000 out of a total of 15,000 Packards that year, so you can see that Packard's volume in the span of 2 to 3 years had gone to about 1/3 of what it had been. So certainly the Depression was biting, but they still produced a very fine automobile.
I know these folks. Steve and I both went to a Catholic school together, Steve Burke, and leave it right here, Steve. I want to open the door so the people in the bleachers can see what the interior of this beauty looks like. We had Dominican nuns for sisters and teachers. They just soon put you through the wall as look at you if you didn't behave. Of course, my mother would go to parent-teacher night, and she'd say if he gets out of line, box his ears, which wasn't a big help, but at any rate, Steve's owned this car and his wife Barbara for quite a long time. It's a spectacular car. Take a look at the upholstery in this. Try finding workmanship like that in one of today's cars. It's a beauty. Steve, how long have you owned this car now? 8 years. Tell us about it, guys.
So Packard was a bit superstitious and didn't want to have a 13th series. So for 1936, they introduced the 14th series cars. This is the 8 on the 134-inch wheelbase. It also has the 320 cubic inch engine rated now at 130 horsepower. They built about 4,000 of these out of 61,000 total, but by that time, most of their volume had migrated to the Packard 120, a medium-priced car. This was number 93 of about 100 built. It was sold new in Philadelphia by the Frankfurt Motor Company. There was a full restoration in Washington State in the mid-1990s, came to Michigan in 2011, and here we have it here today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Barb. Come on up here, folks. That's good right there. You can stop it right there. Okay, let's see your, oh, you got your window card on the other side. You guys are giving me a workout today. A 1937 Packard 120, 138 Touring. This is Greg Petrovich, and Greg has been here many, many times in years gone by. He's from Plymouth, Michigan, and he's got a gorgeous car which you were going to tell us about.
In 1935, Packard introduced the Packard 120, which was their entry into the medium price field so they could survive the Depression. That migrated to the 120B in 1936.
Hey, buddy.
And then this year, the 120C for 1937. For 1937, they also introduced for the first time a long wheelbase version, the 138-inch, which you can see on this example. And they also introduced a version called the CD, which was a very deluxe version of all the 120s. You could have it in selected body styles, had a number of exterior and interior features that made the car a much more premium version versus the standard 120. These are quite rare cars. 1937 eventually proved to be Packard's best year, but the 138 CDs are quite rare among the vehicles built that year.
Overhead. Overhead.
Whoa.
Oh, what a beauty. Look at this. A 1940 Packard model 1801 convertible. This is Jeff Bladow from Plymouth, Michigan. Did I pronounce your name in? Bladow. Okay. Well, I know you've been here before, and you got a gorgeous car. And we appreciate your coming to the show and helping us put this event on. So tell us about his car, folks.
So Packard introduced its first all-steel body in 1938. That continued pretty well unchanged until 1939, but by 1940 it needed a bit of an upgrade, so they created a much more pointed front end, a very sleeker look. The headlights, while still separate from the fenders, were lowered, and catwalk grills were introduced just below the headlamps. For 1940, there was a standard and deluxe version of the 120, which actually reversed the next year, and they put the standard and deluxes onto the six-cylinder. Convertible sedans are particularly rare. It was only offered in the standard series, and versus a total volume of about 98,000, there were 28,000 120s. So quite a nice example and what was becoming a very rare body style by this point in time.
Come on up here, sir. Bring it right up to me. Oh my, look at this. Right there. That's good, right there. Now, we've got a 1947 Packard Clipper, a four-door Touring, and Lee Shedden is from, where are you from, Lee? Ann Arbor. Gosh, I'm in Ann Arbor just about every day. I hope I get to see this sometime cruising through town. How long have you owned the car? 2 weeks. Where did you find it? In Minnesota. Well, we're going to let the guys tell the folks about your car. Is it okay if I open the door?
So Packard had gotten behind the styling game just before World War II. They came out with a Clipper in April of 1941, which was the basic body you're seeing here. Unfortunately, its freshness was severely compromised by the intervention of World War II. After World War II, the Clipper body was the only body that they had in 1946 and 47. It had a new grille, but compared to a 1942, it was pretty much a carryover car. Had two body styles, a club sedan and this four-door touring sedan, as well as some long wheelbase cars. The Custom Super that you see here was their top-of-the-line car, extremely well fitted out on the inside, and I encourage people to take a look at it if you have a chance today. 7 interior lights, a headliner that is patterned fore and aft rather than across, all-wool interior carpet, seats, headliner, 4 different interior colors, chrome steering column, an extremely well fitted out car. And uniquely on the Custom Supers, they did not say Clipper anywhere on the outside of the car. The cheaper cars say Clipper, but this has no badging relative to that on the outside of the car.
And because you did such an outstanding job of describing this automobile, the judges thought that you were spot on because they awarded this man the best in the Packard class.
All right.
Congratulations. Give him a round of applause. You can call it ahead, sir. Another similar styled Packard body. What year have we got here? This is a 48. You can stop it right there, sir. This is a 48 Packard 22nd Series Custom 8, and this is Dennis Kuhn, and Dennis is from Ann Arbor, and I know this car has been here in the past, so tell us about Dennis's car.
So for 1948, Packard had a decision on how they would approach updating their cars. because of World War II, they hadn't really fully amortized the Clipper body. So they decided to do a major change on that body on the light gray car that just passed through. The center body section and the underbody is the same as the old one, but as you can see, they have flow-through fenders, a much different front profile, and pretty much a carryover rear profile. The interior of this car very much mirrors the interior on the Custom Super we looked at. Both of these cars have the 356 9-main engine, which was the most powerful engine you could get in a passenger car in that time frame.
What would have been the top speed in a car like this, Ed?
With overdrive, you could probably approach 100 miles an hour. The aerodynamics being what they are would really limit the car, but the cars have massive torque because of the bore-stroke relationship on the 356, and you can pretty much walk away from idle almost in top gear on these cars.
One of the things that really, if you folks in the bleachers take a good look, the fit and the finish, the gapping between the doors and the fender and the doors and the quarter, and I mean, it's just perfect. It's really a neat car.
One additional item on this, Packard was aspiring to regain their place in the prestige market, and on the custom 8 in particular, there is no Packard badging anywhere on the outside of the car. And they actually had an advertisement which was titled "One Guess What Name It Bears," had a picture of the car entering a nice door, and you were supposed to figure out that it was a Packard. But certainly it's an elegant interpretation of their 22nd series styling update.
Pretty hard not to figure out it's a Packard. You can pull her ahead, sir. Thank you for bringing it. Bring her right on up here to me. Come on. Let's get all of these. There's 3 of them that are similar bodied. Let's get all 3 of you guys with similar bodies right up here. Keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. You can stop right there. Come on, bring yours right up tight. Let's get it in front of the passenger view. You in the middle 50s, Packard, stay back. Come on, you guys, get up close. Get up close. Let the folks in the bleacher take a look at your body style. Get up close. Attaboy, bring her up. All right, this has got an Ohio license plate on it. The paint on this car is just beautiful. Where's your, oh, there it is on that side. Okay, I'm coming. I'm old, but I'll get there. It's a 1951 Packard 200 4-door sedan. This is Ron Gerber. He's out of Toledo, Ohio. The quality of the paint on this car is just amazing. You want me to go down and get all 3 of them, and then you can talk about that? Is that all right? Okay, we're going to go down a little bit further. This one here is a 53 Packard Patrician. This is Tom Murray. Tom, what city are you from? Royal Oak. Well, another really neat Packard. And we're going to get all 3 of you guys right in a cluster. We're going to let the automotive historians talk about all 3 of these cars. It's a 53 Packard Clipper Sportster. And this is Len Gregory. And I know Len's had this car here before. He's from Lambertville. I knew it. All right, guys, it's up. It's all yours.
Okay, so for 1951, Packard introduced an all-new car, and it actually proved to be the last all-new Packard designed and engineered here in Detroit. It would feature what was called contour styling, and it was the first car in the industry where the hood height matched the fender height. And as everyone would know, all subsequent cars adopted that feature, but Packard was in the vanguard in that respect. The gray car here is the lead-in 200 series. It's a deluxe version. It features ultramatic automatic transmission as badged on the rear fender. In that time frame, everybody had to badge their automatics, and Packard was no different than anybody else. It came with a 288 straight 8, a 327 straight 8 was optional. Very good package efficiency, unsurpassed occupant visibility at the time. It was the only car you could see all 4 corners of from the driver's seat. And it was fortunate they had such an advanced car because as events proved, they needed to have this body last for quite a while, and in fact it did last through 1956. The second car is a 1953 Patrician. The Patrician was their top-of-the-line touring sedan in the 51 to 56 period. It has a 327 9-main bearing engine, a new 4-barrel carburetor that year that was good for 180 horsepower. That year they had a new grille ensemble, new side trim, new interior appointments. Power steering, power brakes were already becoming common. Power steering was the first year. Power brakes they had introduced for 1952. In the third car, the yellow Clipper Sportster, Packard had introduced its first hardtop body style in 1951 called the Mayfair, but they actually found that their positioning of the hardtop wasn't really in line with either a luxury pretension or a mid-price pretension. So to fill the gap in '53, they came out with what they called the Clipper Sportster, which was a two-door club sedan with the very nice interior lifted from the Mayfair hardtop, chrome trim on the B-pillar, unique two-tone color schemes, and it actually proved very popular enough that they continued it until 1954. In '54, they did add a second hardtop, but the Clipper Sportster was a very interesting addition at the time, and you see very few of them today, particularly ones such as this in such nice condition.
Ron just told me that the original purchaser of this car, when it was new, didn't like the interior. So he brought it back to the dealership and had the original interior taken out and had the patrician interior put in. And he said that hood ornament is an accessory, $8 extra
Yes.
when it was new. So good job. Thank you for bringing it. You guys can pull ahead. Come on up here, sir. These were really luxury liners in their day. Right there is good. You can stop it. This is a '56 Packard 400, and Tom Upton has had this car here in years gone by. I know he has. He's from Ann Arbor, and this pinky salmon color was really a popular item back in the day. Tell us about it.
So, believe it or not, this is a same basic body as the three cars we just saw. In 1955, Packard knew they had to get more in line with contemporary design standards. They adopted a wraparound windshield, the peaked front fenders, squared up the rear of the car, added the Reynolds wrap side trim, and importantly for them, they had a Y-by feature called torsion level suspension, which was four-wheel interconnected torsion bar suspension, which would level the car, standard on their premium cars, optional on their mid-series Clippers. This 56 is the last Detroit-designed, Detroit-built Packard. The color scheme is called Scottish Heather and Dover White. In 1956, Packard decided to name every one of their colors after a geographic location, and hence the Scottish Heather, Dover White nomenclature here. They also introduced push-button electric automatic shifting that year. Wasn't the most reliable system, very frustrating for some latter-day owners, but again, a Y-by for Packard in that time frame. This car looks like it also has air conditioning. There's two pop-up vents on the dashboard. Packard was one of the early companies, not the first, to have all the air conditioning under dash rather than in the package tray and in the trunk. Nice car, 33,224 of them built, and a real testament to the end of Packard.
Well, we got a straggler here. We've already talked about this body design, but seeing how he's here, I don't want to take anything away from the man. He was nice enough to bring it, so let's introduce, stop right there for me, sir. This is Paul Gallagher. Paul's from Wyandotte. You've been here before, I know you have. This is a '49 Packard Deluxe 8 four-door. Just give him a brief synopsis of this baby.
So in 1949, Packard was celebrating its 50th anniversary. They still needed to pay off the investment in the body shell, so they did a minor change on the black car that we saw a few minutes ago. This is a Deluxe 8 on the shorter 120-inch wheelbase with the 288 straight 8 engine. Ultramatic was their big feature for their 50th anniversary. Initially it was standard on the Customs, later extended to smaller cars. This car is pretty well kitted out with options such as the visor, the corner hood ornament, fog lamps, which was something that Packard really pushed in the post-war years and actually did factory fitment up through the 22nd series on.
Okay, let's get this Studebaker up here. Come on, guys, get these Studebakers up. Keep coming, keep coming. That's good right there. Stop right there. Where's your window card? Now we got it. We got a 1953 Studebaker Starlight Coupe, This is Conrad Zumhagen from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I know you've been here before a few times. How long have you owned this car? How long? 3 years, so this is relatively new to your collection. Tell us about this car.
So Studebaker had celebrated its 100th anniversary as a vehicle producer in 1952. Obviously, those earlier vehicles were not automobiles, they were wagons. They were the country's largest producer of wagons up through the demise of that particular form of transportation. For 1953, they introduced a brand new car. Actually, they introduced 2 cars that year, although not understood as such. They had the coupes, which are shown here, the coupes and hardtops on a 120-inch wheelbase, a very low cowl, a very rakish profile. The car was done by Raymond Loewy and his associates. Extremely well received, but unfortunately not the best initial design quality. And in fact, when they went to produce the coupes, they wouldn't go together on the assembly line because the front sheet metal plus the flexible frame led to production problems. The second car they introduced were the normal sedans, which had a higher cowl, higher seating position, and they had so much complexity in the assembly line that they were really constrained in production for the 1953 model year.
Right there is good. This is a 1961 Studebaker Hawk. Tom Delisle from Dundee. Tom, I know you've been here any number of different times. How long have you owned this car? 95 is when you bought it, so you've owned it for 32 years? I went to Catholic school. You can't fool me on math. So, tell us about this car.
So the 53 Coupe that we just saw migrated to a separate Hawk series starting in 1956, and they had 4 flavors of the Hawk in 1956. 1957 they had 2 flavors, went down to 1 flavor in 1959. By 1961 they were actually considering dropping the vehicle, but they decided to continue it. This was the last finned Hawk. In 1962 they went to the Gran Turismo Hawk designed by Brooks Stevens and eliminated the fins, made it a hardtop only, and did a lot of other minor interior and exterior changes. The 61s are notable for the unique color band on the rear fender. None of the other Hawks had that narrow color band on the rear fenders. It was also the first year for a 4-speed transmission, so Studebaker was launching their performance image with such features as this, and it was a nice end to the generation of finned Hawks that started in 1957.
Well, the judges thought that your car was outstanding, so give this man a round of applause for winning the Studebaker class. You can pull her ahead for me, sir. Okay, now stop right there. This is an 84 Studebaker Avanti. This was really kind of a after Studebaker. But at any rate, Warren Goodloe, again, another one of his cars, and of course he's from Livonia. Instead of reading what he has on his windshield, I'm going to let the fellas tell you folks in the bleachers about this car.
So the Avanti was designed in 1961, again by Raymond Loewy and Associates, as a performance vehicle and image builder for Studebaker. It was targeted to come out in 1962 model year, but they had production problems and a host of other issues that led to a delay to 1963. It was offered in 63 and 64 by Studebaker, but when Studebaker closed down South Bend and moved to Canada, they dropped the Avanti. A couple of dealers in South Bend decided to resurrect it for 1966 as the Avanti 2 and sold about 100-150 cars a year up through about 1982. 1982, Stephen Blake, a Washington real estate mogul, bought the company and decided to update the cars a bit. As you can see here, this was the product of his updating upwards. He added urethane front and rear bumpers, a much more modern interior, finally had seats with reclining features, full leather interior, still used the GM powertrains that they had adopted in 1966. And this car has some of the features of the touring version option with blackout features around the car. You could get it in full blackout features. You could also get it in bright work with color bands within the bumpers. It was one of the last versions that still had the Studebaker chassis under it.
So, okay, what do we got here? A 1923 Durant Star four-door sedan. This is Debbie Gagnon, and Debbie, where are you from? You're from Willis. Okay, have you had this car here before? You have, once. Okay, tell the folks about it.
Well, in the beginning, the early years of the automobile, there were a lot of different car companies. Some larger than others, some sprang up, lasted a little bit, and then faded away for a variety of reasons. The Star was made by Durant, and this is an interesting story. Billy Durant started General Motors, got kicked out of General Motors, started Chevrolet, took over General Motors with Chevrolet, and then got kicked out of General Motors once again about 1920. So he decided to try again with a car company. And using the model of what he had done at General Motors, he amassed a variety of different cars for every price class. And from the competitor to the Model T to competitor Packard. And the Star was his low-priced car. It was quite distinctive with a white star on the radiator, so you could see it coming and going. And it was intended to be in the Model T price class with a few upgrades. It had Durant used an engine made by Continental Motors and other parts that he purchased, but the Star was built, and many more Stars were closed cars than comparable Model Ts, and it had a little better performance, and it had, where the Model T had a complicated to use planetary transmission, or at least complicated until you learned how to use it. The Star had a conventional sliding gear transmission, all of which they advertised. But Durant's empire basically foundered in the beginning of the Depression, and he finally gave up the car business for good. So, very nice car.
Pull her ahead for me, ma'am. Okay, a 1920 Liberty, and this man has been here every year for I can't begin to tell you how many years. If you don't recognize him, I'm sure you recognize his bow tie and his cap. So, at any rate, tell us about his car.
Well, among the many car companies that sprang up, especially the Detroit area, the Liberty Car Company was one of them. Started about 1916. And unlike some of the other small car companies, they made their own six-cylinder engine, although they purchased a lot of the other parts. And they made cars through 1924. Medium-priced car, very nice-looking car. This particular car has been in the family for a great many years. And I don't remember the details. Maybe you can tell us a little bit.
Grandfather restored it in the 60s to match identically the car that he and my grandmother went on their honeymoon in.
Oh, wow.
Great car. Great story.
Don't move. The judges thought it was a great car, too, so congratulations, you got the best in your class. Give this man a round of applause. Okay, let's get these Kaisers up here. Oh, man. I remember these when I was a kid. Right there's good. Stop it right there. Beautiful paint on this car. This is a 48 Frazer Manhattan, and this is Theo and Diane Odell from Milan. I know you've had this here several times. Seeing how you're the only body style like this, we'll let the judges tell the folks in the bleachers about this car.
So Henry Kaiser was a very successful industrialist before World War II, and during World War II he was very successful at providing armament and ships for the promotion of to fight the World War II. After the war, he decided he wanted to enter the car business because he'd been successful in any business he'd entered until that time, but as the events proved, the cars were the one thing that did defeat him. The original plan was to have a front drive Kaiser and a rear drive Frazer, but they had development issues with the front drive Kaiser and decided to make the Kaiser and Frazer basically identical except for grille, trim, much nicer interior on the Frazer. They further upgraded the Frazer about mid-year when they introduced the Manhattan. It had extensive color keying inside the interior, things such as the pedals, the steering wheel, the knobs, a very luxurious interior, and in fact it led to the ultimate edition of a Kaiser custom version, not quite as nice as the Manhattan, but the Frazer Manhattan did very well in terms of share of sales in this time frame. 19,000 actually out of a total 140,000 for this model year. The Manhattan continued up through the end of Frazer production in 51, and then in 53, Kaiser adopted the Manhattan label for their top of the line as they had concurrently eliminated the Frazer at the end of the 51 model year.
You can pull her ahead. Thanks for bringing it. Let's get all these up here in a group. They're all similar bodied. Come on, bring them up here, guys. Come on. Don't be shy. The judges are really, and the automotive historians are friendly. Get on up here. That's good. Stop right there. Let's get all of them. Get up tight. Get up tight because you're all similar bodied. We're going to just talk about all of them. I'm just going to walk on down the line and I'm going to let the judges talk about your cars. Oh, here comes a fifth one. Okay. All right. Well, here we go. The first one here in the front is a 51 Kaiser Traveler Deluxe 4-door. This is Richard Anderson from Plymouth, and I know you've been here before. And oh my, he's got a little dog in the back here. And that dog looks like he's enjoying every bit of his ride. He's got it open so you can see it was actually like a station wagon sedan, basically. So we're going to keep on coming. We're just going to go right down the line, and then we'll let the judges tell you folks about it. This is a 51 Kaiser Deluxe. This is Mike Harper from Belleville. Mike's been here before, I know he has. This one here's got a really pretty rose-colored paint job on it. And this is a 51 Kaiser Deluxe Coupe. And another familiar face and a big supporter of our museum. This is Gilbert Chesney, and he's from Chelsea. So they're all nice cars. We'll keep moving. I'm going to get two more if I can. This is a 54 Kaiser Manhattan. This is Gilbert and Rowan Jackson from South Branch, Michigan. We've got one last one down here. We got a 54 Kaiser Manhattan. And this is Peter Sylvain from Farmington. So tell us about these body styles.
Okay, so here we go. 1951, actually in March of 1951 model year, Kaiser introduced an all-new car as shown here, and that body shell would continue through the end of production in early 1955. It was designed by Howard Darren, a famed coach builder who had contributed to Packard and several other companies over the years. It's called anatomic styling. Very expansive glass area, low hood. Fender's not quite at fender level, but very close. The unique body style aspect of this first vehicle, this version was called the Traveler. It's because it was what we would interpret now as a hatchback body style. In their prior body, they had introduced a similar feature by converting sedans into a single-piece liftgate as shown here. For 1951, the spare was hidden under the floor, which further improved the usefulness of the hatchback type of feature. The green sedan right behind it is the normal 4-door sedan version of the car. In this time frame, they had standard and deluxe trim models. The standard model had a very thin side molding. The deluxe version has this wide lower molding that you see here. The 51s were the last year for a split windshield at Kaiser, and on this body style in 52 they would adopt a one-piece windshield. The rose beige colored car, the third one in line here, is a 51 Club Coupe, which was a very stylish, close coupled body. It was not shared with the two-door sedan. The seating arrangement was more close coupled than the two-door sedan. The roof was consequently shorter, and it made for a much more sporty looking car. In fact, the owner of this car provided us with a picture of it in front of Edgar Kaiser's former Ann Arbor home. Edgar Kaiser was the president of Kaiser Frazer in this time frame, and he was a resident of Ann Arbor because the cars were produced here in Willow Run in Ypsilanti. The last two vehicles are the 1954-55 redesign. Edgar Kaiser was fascinated with the Buick XP300 show car, and he loved the front end theme of that car, particularly the concave grille, and asked the stylist if they could come up with a similar front end theme. They were very successful in doing so, and at the same time modernized the rear of the car with a three-piece wraparound backlight, safety glow tail lamps that extend along the top of the rear fenders. It has an aircraft style instrument panel, and for the first time they had a power boost for the 226 straight six. It now had 140 horsepower courtesy of the McCullough supercharger. So I would encourage everybody here at the show to take a look at these cars. While it was a small company, it had many innovations, particularly in the color and trim arena, led by Carlton Spencer, who is their interior design director. You should really take a look at these cars because they're really very interesting vehicles.
Keep the line moving, guys. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Thank you. Thank you all for bringing these wonderful looking cars. I remember as a kid when these first came out, they had a Kaiser parade through downtown Ypsilanti, and we were sitting on the front porch of our house on Pearl Street watching them roll by. It was great. Keep them moving. Keep them moving. Let's get this Jeepster up here. You and the Mercury, stay back right where you're at. Okay, good. Stop. Okay, we've got a 1969 Kaiser Jeepster Commando convertible. This is Richard Folsom, and Rich is from Livonia. Before the judges talk about your car, just to keep the show moving in a timely fashion, the judges thought that you were best in the class. So give this man a round of applause. It's all you guys.
Kaiser had purchased Willys Corporation of Toledo in 1953 as a way of staying in the business. They eventually consolidated all production of Kaisers and Willys at the Toledo plant, and after they left the car business here, they continued to maintain the Jeep business as part of Kaiser. In 1967, they decided to reintroduce the Jeepster, which was a model they had offered in 1948 to 50, very much of this style, but obviously on an earlier platform. This interpretation was on a 101-inch wheelbase. They had 4 body styles. You could get a roadster, a pickup, a station wagon, or a convertible. And the convertible was distinguished by the rear tailgate, the wraparound convertible top. You had a 134 cubic inch 4-cylinder standard, or you could order the Dauntless V6, which was the ex-Buick V6, in which this car is fitted with. It also was available with turbo-hydromatic with the V6.
Gentleman just told me that this is one of 235 of these that were made. Go ahead, sir. Give this man a round of applause one more time. Let's get these Mercurys up here. Okay, let's start with this 1963. I had the pleasure of talking with John. John Magnuson is from Plymouth. This car's got a really unique history, and he was kind enough to give me a fact sheet on this. Without trying to steal your thunder, guys, let me just say that this is an unrestored Survivor. It was bought new by a couple, and apparently they went through a divorce. So 1 year after the marriage, when they divorced, the wife decided the car was hers, and she kept it hidden in a storage facility for 36 years. Wow. In a climate-controlled factory building. And it was taken out of storage in 2000 with 4,600 miles. The car was sold to several different collectors, eventually made its way to Michigan, and now its current owner, John, is the proud owner. Tell us about these cars.
So Mercury had gotten very ambitious in the late 1950s in terms of establishing a dominant position in upper middle segment. It proved to be unsuccessful, and as a consequence, Ford pared back and had the 61, 62 Mercuries, very common with the Fords at that time. In 63, they added a lot more differentiation to the Mercuries. This is the first manifestation of that. And one way they increased that differentiation was to introduce what they called the breezeway roofline. They had it on both sedans and hardtops, so that you could get it in a two-door and a four-door. The rear window would retract for ventilation, which was quite effective on the highway and around town for flow-through ventilation. You could keep the side windows up, open the vents, and get nice flow-through ventilation. In 1962, Mercury had introduced the S55, which was their performance offering. This is an example of a 63 S55, and for the first time this year, you could get a four-door S55 in the hardtop version, which is shown here. They also added a fastback version early in the year and had the regular convertible and normal two-door hardtop as well. They built about 1,200 of these four-door hardtop S55s in total, and it's equipped with a 390 4-barrel, 300 horsepower. Two-barrel. We must have had a
1 of 50.
delete option two-barrel.
Okay, thanks. That's good right there. Stop it right there. 65 Mercury Park Lane two-door. This is Charles Wood II from Monroe, Michigan. Charles, has this car been here before? It has. I just love this color combination. I just love the way this car looks. Tell the crowd about it, guys.
So this year, Mercury went back to a fully differentiated product versus the companion Ford. While the roof lines were sheer, all the sheet metal was now unique to the Mercury. It was on a 123-inch wheelbase, significantly longer than the Ford, had a perimeter frame and new coil spring rear suspension. In fact, the styling theme emulated the Lincoln to some extent, and they began to advertise it as now in the Lincoln Continental tradition. It was very successful. Actually, it was the most successful Mercury since 1957 in terms of the full-size Mercury. Sold 182,000 units. A huge expansion of options, some of which are on this car, such things as power door locks, tilt wheel, power vents. They built about 5,000 Park Lane Marauders, and this is a very nice example of that.
Okay, you can pull her ahead. Thank you. Bring that Continental up here. This car has been here any number of years. He comes every year. He's a big supporter. We certainly appreciate him doing that. I'm going to, now this was not considered a Lincoln. This was considered a Continental, correct? Correct. And what do they call this color? I don't know color. Okay, well, I bet these guys know. Go ahead, guys.
So this was Ford's attempt to establish a credibility in the ultra-luxury segment. It was a $10,000 car in 1956 when the regular Lincoln hardtop was $4,600. So you could see that it was a very aspirational vehicle. It was virtually hand-built, had exquisite finish and quality of components. The chrome specification on the cars was multiple times the usual industry standard. As Ron mentioned, it was never branded as a Lincoln, and initially it was a separate corporation division. Ultimately, it was rolled into the Lincoln division, had its own manufacturing site. 126-inch wheelbase. It had a full perimeter frame, one of the first cars with a perimeter frame with the exhaust running outside the frame to permit the press floor plans and to get the overall height of the car up. The 368 V8 was shared with the regular Lincoln. It only came as a two-door hardtop, but a handful were built as convertibles, or actually converted as convertibles by outside coach builders. They built about 3,000 in total between 56 and 57. When the new Lincoln came out in 58, It was folded into the regular Lincoln line as a model and featured a reverse backlight very similar to the breezeway design we just saw in the 63 Mercury.
Okay, you can pull her ahead. We've got a little bit of a dilemma here, guys. We've got the Orphans of Ford Motor Company next, and the class winner for this particular class is not in the pass and review, at least not that I can see. It's a Mercury Monterey, and it's white, but he's not in line that I can see. Bring your Cougar up here. So, okay, well, too much of this all at once. You better just hand them to me one at a time. Stop right there. The man that just rolled away in that Continental won best in class for his car. I'll let you hang on to this and this, and we'll see to it that he gets it. Okay, now, the Mercury Monterey is not in the pass and review. I may as well give you this one too, and that way I'll have less clutter up here. Okay, Kevin, thank you. Okay, we've got a 68 Mercury Cougar XR7 two-door coupe. This is Mark and Judy Culwick from Wolverine Lake, Michigan. Where is Wolverine Lake? North of Novi in Commerce Township. Okay, how long have you owned the car? 8 years. What do they call this color? Augusta Green. Is it a 390 car? You bet it is, he says. Okay, take it away, guys.
So the Cougar had been introduced in 1967 as Mercury's entry into the pony car segment. It had unique sheet metal versus the Mustang. It had a 3-inch longer wheelbase at 111 inches. It was Motor Trend's Car of the Year. It had an upscale leather-trimmed XR7 version. It only came as a V8, and it had only a two-door hardtop body style. For 68, which is the year of this car, they had some minor changes. They introduced the 302 engine in 2- and 4-barrel versions. They also had the 427 and 428, and also introduced disc brakes for the first time. The XR7G, which this vehicle is an example of, was a mid-year offering. It included simulated hood scoops, road lamps, hood locking pins, racing style, outside mirror, GT exhaust extensions, unique wheels, and various interior upgrades, as well as radial tires. The owner was very nice in providing some additional information relative to the car in terms of its build sequence. The basic car was built at Dearborn Assembly Plant. It went to A.O. Smith for the XR7 add-ons, and then if it's equipped with a sunroof, it then went to ASC to have the sunroof installed. A very interesting vehicle. You could get multiple engine choices in it, despite it being a XR7G, and a very rarely seen car these days. So thank you for bringing it.
How fast have you had this car going? Be honest. Peppy. Okay, that's honest enough. Pull her ahead for me.
How fast do you say? Peppy.
All right, guys, bring them up. Chrysler Corporation.
Oh my
Get
goodness.
them up.
Everyone's an orphan now.
Stop
Yeah.
right there. God, that's a gorgeous car. Let's see your window placard,
Wow.
sir.
Airstream.
Okay, we've got a 1934 DeSoto Airflow sedan, Mark Pease from Ann Arbor. I know you've been here before. This car is absolutely stunning.
So the Airflow was introduced by Chrysler Corporation in 1934. They had conducted a number of aerodynamic experiments with cars starting from the late 1920s. In fact, they found that some cars were more aerodynamically efficient going in reverse rather than forward. So they determined that they would take an aerodynamic approach to this vehicle, and in doing so, they also repackaged the vehicle. They moved the engine forward, they moved the passengers forward, and created a much more spacious interior without making the car overly long. We're able to lower the car significantly, and it also features semi-unitized construction. In fact, that semi-unitized construction was one of the reasons it had initial difficulties. The car had been introduced very early in the calendar year, but they weren't able to produce vehicles because of these production difficulties. When it was finally introduced, the competition had already introduced a whispering campaign about the car because it was so different looking, and they were hoping to scare off people from buying it. That, or the fact that it was so different looking, did scare off people. At DeSoto, it was the only DeSoto you could get for 1934. At Chrysler, you could get an Airflow as well as a conventional looking car. And at Chrysler, the conventional car well outsold the Airflow, and DeSoto had real sales problems this year. The car was progressively made more mainstream looking in the front end, but at the same time it lost the purity of design which this car exhibits, such as that waterfall grille, the hood ornament, which is duplicated in the ornament on the fender skirts. Just a truly elegant Art Deco design. The seats are tubular framed, again, an Art Deco theme, and regrettably it was not successful, and it proved to make Chrysler very conservative in styling thereafter because they simply didn't want to get too far out in front of the country and what mainstream customers desired in terms of vehicle appearance.
Okay, we got a 1942 DeSoto Custom Club Coupe. This is Dan and Lois Dolan from Noblesville, Indiana. I'm going to go down the line just a little bit. You just stay right there. Let's see your window card, sir. Get it out there. This is a 47 DeSoto. This one here is a custom suburban sedan, and this is Don Smith from Berkeley. Keep going. I'm going to get these three similar bodied ones all in a group. Bring yours forward for me, sir. No, you can leave it there. You're okay. I'll come around. I'm old, but I can still move. This is a 47 DeSoto Custom Convertible, and this is Bobby Youngblood from Eau Claire, Michigan, and I know you've been here before. I love your car. Last time you were here, the top was down. Okay, go ahead, guys.
So this basic body of DeSoto was introduced for the 1941 model year and would last up through the 48 model year. The 42 is a very distinctive design. It was the Series S10, and as you can see, it has hidden headlamps, which was the second car to have that after the Accord of 1936 to 37. They advertised them as out of sight except at night. It was their second year of the vertical grille work, which would prove to be a DeSoto design theme up through 1955 between various teeth executions. This year they had a Fifth Avenue option, which had such things as an A-tube radio, a power antenna, illuminated hood ornament, etc. It runs 115 horsepower straight six, 236 cubic inches. This particular one has fluid drive, the radio, the illuminated horn ornament, and vanity mirrors. The second car in line here is the 47 DeSoto Suburban. After the war, the one major change that Chrysler made was to flow the front fender line into the front doors, very similar to the Packard Clipper execution, and it did significantly modernize the vehicle versus the 42 fender design. You can see the grille teeth are still very characteristic, and everybody in that time frame would remember the smiling DeSoto expression. One might consider this to be the first crossover utility vehicle in suburban form. The trunk opens to the interior. There's a wood cargo floor and stainless steel rub strips. The seats are plastic coated fabric. It has 9 passenger capability. There's 2 full seats plus a folding jump seat, and those second and third seats were slidable for varying people and luggage accommodation. The body style was available through 1951. They continued it into their next body style, but essentially, as time passed, it was supplanted by the all-steel station wagon.
One of the things I forgot to introduce was this gentleman back here in this gray colored convertible. So this is a 48 DeSoto Custom Convertible, and this is John Grace from Westland. So John, we didn't forget you, but they pretty much described these cars. So guys, go ahead and start pulling those DeSotos forward.
Ron, did you want me to talk about the last 2 convertibles?
Yeah, stop right there. I guess we forgot one thing. Before you do that, bear with me. Just bear with me. Keep me straight, Kevin. I'm getting a workout. Which one? This one right here. Okay. you were awarded best in your class. So, congratulations. Give this man a round of applause. Thank you for bringing your car and supporting our Orphan car show. Go ahead, guys.
So these last two of this vintage are Series S11 custom convertibles. I've talked about the design features as part of my commentary on the Suburban just ahead of it. They also had the semi-skirted rear wheels, another change versus the 1942. The horsepower was reduced to 109 horsepower on the post-war cars. And across the 46 to 48 time frame, they built 8,100 of these custom convertibles.
Guys, do us a favor, when you pull your cars forward over this rubber mat here, make sure it's rolling pretty good, otherwise it's going to snag like it did last time. Bring it up here. Come on, little lady. I love your car, and I really appreciate your coming year after year. Thank you very, very much. Did you talk about all of these? Okay, come on. I'm not trying to cut anybody short, just trying to keep things moving. So here we go. We're going to have you stop right here. We're going to let the judges get a good look at your 49 DeSoto. This is a DeSoto S13 Custom Club Coupe. This is Patrick Bisson from Flushing, Michigan. Patrick, you've been here before, a lot of times. How many miles are on this car? 30,000 actual miles. Can you believe it? Go ahead, it's all you.
So in March of 1949, Chrysler introduced their first post-war bodies, of which this is an example, the S13, as was noted on the windshield placard. The car was a very boxy design. It became known as the three-box design, piled on top of each other. It was a very efficient design package-wise, a lot of interior room for the overall size of the car, but it was not really in line with the styling trends, and progressively over the remaining years of this body shell, they tried to make the car look a little more streamlined. It's 125-inch wheelbase, which was a 4-inch increase. They still had the long wheelbase cars at 139-inch. This particular example is noted as quite low mileage. It's all original except the tires, the brakes, and the battery. The second owner purchased it around 1988. The options include the tip-toe shift fluid drive, the radio, and illuminated hood ornament, and it was delivered in March of 1949 as number 982, so it's one of the very earliest DeSotos built of this new generation.
There's more information on this man's back seat, so when he parks in his designated area, if you want to go and check out some more, you can. Pull it up, sir. Yeah, you stay back in the blue one. Stop right there. Stop. Stop right there. This is a 51 DeSoto Custom. This is Dan Sinclair. This is, again, from Canton, Michigan. I just can't get over it for these early 50s cars. The fit and the finish on these cars is really amazing.
Yes. Chrysler made a very high-quality car in the post-war era into the middle 50s. Unfortunately, it declined when the 57 forward-look cars came out. But back to this vehicle. As I mentioned, Chrysler progressively modernized the 49 body shell. In 51 and 52, it has the new front clip shown here, a more rounded lower look with the hood cascading down to the grille rather than a very bullnose hood design. The very distinctive DeSoto teeth had now emerged. Rather than individual grille bars, there were literally separate teeth, certainly adding to the grinning look of it. 1952 was also the year they introduced the Fire Dome V8. That was a mid-year introduction, and at that point all the cars received a hood scoop. So this would indicate that this is an early 52 because of the lack of the hood scoop. Still a very roomy car, well appointed inside, but at the same time a conservative design by most people's perspective in this time frame.
Okay, get these DeSotos up here. Come on. Okay, stop right there. Now I recognize this car, and any of you that have been coming here for any length of time, I know you recognize this car. I think he comes just on purpose because he waits for me to open the back door and pull out Groucho. Groucho had a television show called You Bet Your Life in the 50s, and it was sponsored by DeSoto. And at any rate, he lost his cigar. We'll get it. He said he'll smoke it later. But Groucho would always end the commercial by saying, "Tell him Groucho sent you." So at any rate, I didn't mean to steal your time, guys. Tell us about this car.
So by 1954, Chrysler was really behind the eight ball styling wise. So for 1955, they gave Virgil Exner free rein to redesign their cars. And the 55-56 full line of Chrysler products were extremely good looking cars. This is the second year of that basic body. It's the first year that Chrysler started putting fins on their cars. The 55s had a straight through rear fender line. Actually, it tapered a bit. 56, they raised the fender line to the point shown here. They also introduced very distinctive triple tail lamps, which was a DeSoto design feature up through 1959. It also was it was the first year they did not have teeth in the front. They instead went to a mesh grille. This was the first year for Chrysler's four-door hardtops, and a particularly notable innovation of this car is the rear window design, which you can see on the passenger side partly down. Because of the intrusion of the dog leg into the door, they didn't have room to have the window as a one-piece unit fully drop. So the main window drops down and the vent window actually pivots forward. So there are actually two rear side windows in this car to get the hardtop effect.
Did they have a lot of problems because of that design?
Not that I've read about. The owner might be able to comment on that.
The headliners have a tendency to leak on them.
He said the headliners have a tendency to leak. So, other than that, go ahead and pull her head for me, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming year after year. We really appreciate folks like you. Thank you. Oh, this is beautiful. Bring this car up here. Pretty, pretty blue colors. You and the red one, pull yours up behind his. You and the white one, stay back. Pull that red one up here because they're both similar bodied cars. We've got a 57 DeSoto Fire Dome, and this is Joe White from Muskegon. Joe, have you been here before? You have, several times. He's even got the DeSoto emblem on his golf shirt. A real die-hard DeSoto guy, and this one here is just stunning. This is a 57 Fire Dome Sportsman, and this belongs to Ed Nelson. Ed, what city are you from? I can't see. Oakland. Okay. How long have you owned this car? You've only had it 3 years. By the way, the owner's the passenger, not the driver. He's got his own chauffeur today, so we'll let you guys tell the crowd about him.
Okay, so we'll talk about both of these cars together. 1957 was when Chrysler captured the industry lead on styling. These cars in their time were absolutely stunning in a visual sense. They were lower and sleeker than any car on the road in 1957. The cowl height was very low. The seating position was very low. They had a unique wraparound windshield which eliminated the dogleg knee knocking effect quite effectively. It had torsion bar suspension on the front for the first time. And in particular, the DeSoto was probably the finest expression of that year's forward look. It was a very clean design, a very eager-looking forward motion type of design with the side treatment on it. Unfortunately, the car's quality was not the best. The cars were somewhat rushed to production. They changed their entire lineup over in 1957. And there were a lot of fit and finish water leakage issues at the 57 model year. Progressively, they were addressed in 1958 and further addressed in 59. But in terms of visuals, these cars are just a stunning example of Chrysler's forward look introduced in 1957.
You can pull her head, sir. Thank you very much. Your turn to watch him. Oh, by the way, he's owned this car for 47 years.
Wow.
A real, gotta love the guy. Go ahead. Second owner. Okay. Come on, bring this red one up. Are we done with this guy? We're done. You can go ahead and keep going ahead, sir. Thank you for bringing it. All right, bring those white ones up here. Come on, the two of you together. Keep coming. One of them is real trouble. I know the guy in that second car. But at any rate, stop right there. That's good. A 1960 DeSoto Fireflight four-door, and this is Joe Ely, and Joe's from Allen Park. And Joe's been here before, I know he has. He's also got a Groucho doll in his backseat. Popular Groucho doll. At any rate, Rick Reschy has been here God knows how many times. He's a big supporter. He's really active at the museum and with the Chrysler people. Rick, how long have you owned this car now? He's owned it for 35 years. Rick and I used to work together back when the days when Briarwood very first opened in October of 1973.
Yeah.
Rick
Thank
was in the paint department and I was selling furniture back then. So
I got a
at any
picture, I
rate,
think.
tell us about these cars, guys.
You'll have to
So
send me
in
a thing so I can get you
1958,
back
there
on
was
my
a
phone.
massive
Okay, sure.
industry-wide
You need anything,
volume
don't hesitate. I'll stop by and
reduction.
fix
And
it.
DeSoto
Thank you,
was
thank you.
particularly
No problem. How long
hurting
you
at
gonna
the,
do? They'll be done about
volume
3
decline.
probably.
Yeah, I'll be here till
1959 was actually their widest model lineup in history, but despite that, their sales still remained very low, and the rumors started that DeSoto was going to exit from the automotive scene. The 1960 was somewhat of a suggestion that those rumors might be true because the lineup was dramatically pared back from 1959. In 59, it had 4 series. In 1960, they only had 2 series, the Fireflight and the Adventurer. And they also eliminated both the convertibles and the station wagons, which in some respects were the glamour cars of a brand in those days. The engines were downsized a bit to 361s and 383s. The car was very nicely styled. It shared all Chrysler sheet metal as it had done for some time. The front grille execution was quite unique. The side trim effectively conveyed the length of the car. A very nice looking car, but by then the rumors had started and people were starting to worry about buying a DeSoto. The 61 on the right there is the last DeSoto. It was actually withdrawn from production in November of 1960. It only built about 3,000 cars, of which only 900 were two-door hardtops. In fact, I remember very well being in the car with my mother and hearing the radio announcement in November 1960 that DeSoto was going out of business, and as a 6-year-old I had no clue what that meant for the business. All I knew was that I'd admired DeSotos for a long time. It was kind of sad to see them go.
Okay, guys, pull them ahead. Thank you for bringing them. $911, I'm sorry. Stop right there. That's perfect. Let's see your window card. Right here. Got it. All right. A 48 Plymouth Special Deluxe Sedan. This is Kyle Lukes from Woodhaven, Michigan. It's a gorgeous car. I just can't believe the fit and the finish on these cars. I mean, they just amaze me. At any rate, a 48 Plymouth Business Coupe. This is Jim Young from Flat Rock. Tell us about these two cars, guys.
Well, Chrysler, Walter P. Chrysler, when he left General Motors, kind of in a fit, eventually started his own car company, 1924, with the Chrysler. Made a solid line of medium-priced cars. They sold well. They were, one of the reasons they sold so well is they had a lot of advanced engineering features, like 4-wheel hydraulic brakes, full pressure lubrication on all the engines. But Walter P. Chrysler knew that he needed to become a full-line company like General Motors. And so, first he bought Dodge, brought out DeSoto, and then he brought out Plymouth to go head-to-head with Henry Ford and his Model A Ford, 1928. And the Plymouth carried on all of the Chrysler engineering features, the 4-wheel hydraulic brakes and others. Had a big 4-cylinder engine, it's quite powerful engine for its size. And Chrysler was so proud of this car that he drove out to Dearborn and he walked into Henry Ford's luncheon meeting to show him the car. And when all the Ford guys got done looking with it, he tossed Henry Ford the keys and said, "Keep the car, Henry. Call me a cab." And he took the cab back to the Chrysler plant. But it was immediately successful. And despite the Depression, Chrysler actually flourished, despite the Depression and some other problems they had. And the Plymouth basically underpinned Chrysler's prosperity all through that time. 1933, by then Chevrolet had a 6-cylinder engine and Ford had a V8. So Plymouth got a 6-cylinder engine, about a 201 cubic inch job, but it was still a cut above the Chevy in terms of durability and reliability because it had full pressure lubrication. All through especially in the late 30s and all through the 40s, Plymouths were extremely successful. Sometimes they outsold Chevrolet, and a few times they even gave Ford a run for their money. By 1948, these cars had much bigger bodies. They had a slightly bigger 6-cylinder engine, although related to the first one. And they were known for their reliability, durability, and just plain good value. And in fact, people that needed it for severe service, like taxi cabs, would often have Plymouths. If you watch old movies like I do, often the taxi cabs are Plymouths. Yeah.
This has got to be one of my favorite all-time Plymouth designs. Bring this baby up here. Dual antennas, right at the height of the fin era. It's gorgeous, just gorgeous. A 59 Sport Fury, Ned Gleason from Ann Arbor. Ned, how many years have you owned this car? 8. The interior, you've got it, when he parks this thing, you folks got to walk out in the field and take a look at the upholstery in this car. It's stunning. Go ahead, guys.
Well, by 1957, Plymouth and all the Chrysler cars came out with those dramatic forward-look cars like we saw in the DeSotos a little while ago. They didn't share much with the old, staid, solid, reliable Plymouths of the old days, but boy, they sure were exciting. These Plymouths, this is the third year of the forward look. They basically shared the underpinnings with all of the Chrysler cars. They just came in short, long, longer, and really long versions, and these are the short versions. Quite an attractive car. It has the engineering features that came with the forward look cars. The torsion bar front suspension, the clever asymmetric rear leaf springs, a lot of other solid engineering from Chrysler. Now this particular Fury was their top-of-the-line sporty model. And you can see it's decorated with that nice aluminum foil on the side. And it has the optional imitation tire on the rear trunk lid, which was a kind of a thing that Chrysler cars did for a while. The Sport Fury has a 361B block engine, which was new in '58 in the bigger cars, and in '59 it came in the Sport Fury 361. Gave it a lot of performance.
Dual quads.
Yes, dual quads. So this was quite a again a really powerful engine.
And a record player.
Oh yes, and this one has the record player, another Chrysler option. And what I find one of the more interesting options in '59 was the swivel seats. And maybe give us a demonstration.
Well, make sure you got it.
Chrysler cars did not have park positions back then, so yeah, they're rolling away. There you go.
Can you see that, folks?
The seat swivels out. You can sit down and swivel the seat
swivel
in.
back in.
Yep, and it latches inside.
I guess they both swivel.
Yes.
He's going to show you. The other one goes out as well.
Yep.
There it goes.
They both swivel. What a neat feature.
It is a neat feature.
Yep, they did that just for a couple of years.
Easy access.
Yep, yep.
Especially when you get old like me.
People weren't as old back then, so the swivel seat option went away pretty soon.
Thank you. You can pull her head, sir.
Yeah.
Notice the white walls were really white walls back then. And anybody that customized cars always wanted those hubcaps. They were a hot item. Bring that police car up here. Come on.
Whoa.
No burnouts here today. Stop it right there. That's great. Okay, we got a 84 Plymouth Grand Fury sedan. This is Eric Lynch from Shelby Township. Is this car pretty much all the way it was when it was in service?
As far as I can tell, yes. I tried to make all the equipment correct.
I see. Okay, go ahead, guys.
Well, it's good to see the police are on the scene here, you know.
Keep your ticket book inside.
Yeah, yeah, right. 1984. This car is built on the M body platform, which is sort of related to the Volare, which came out in '76. It has a lot of the familiar Chrysler engineering features of the time. Unit body. It has the torsion bar suspension, but they laid the torsion bars transversely, crosswise in the car compared to other Chryslers with longitudinal torsion bars. These were very popular for a while, and they were very, very popular for police duty because, among other things, they came with a big 360 cubic inch engine and a lot of other heavy-duty stuff just for police use. And they came with the cops liked the steel wheels and the dog dish hubcaps. That was one of their favorite things. This was a car from the Gaylord State Police post, and it obviously has been restored or maintained to look just like it looked when it was out catching perps and giving
What did
tickets
these
to
cars
scooters.
have for power, Bob?
This had a 360 cubic inch engine, yeah, and probably a 3-speed torque flight engine. And like I say, this is a great example of what you saw patrolling the highways in the 80s.
Do they actually allow you to drive this car on the road? I see. I didn't think so. Okay, you can pull her. Thanks for bringing it. Come on, bring that big gold beast up here. Bring it right up to me, sir. Come on. That's good right there. Okay, we got a 75 Plymouth Grand Fury 4-door hardtop. And this is, again, Eric Leish from, my God, how many cars does this guy own anyway? A dozen. No kidding. Tell us about it.
Well, the Grand Fury was built on the C-body platform, the same as the Chryslers. This is a big car, and basically Plymouth bragged about it quite a bit. It's a 4-door hardtop too, which was a little unusual by this time. Yeah, just notice there's no B-pillar. It too has a 360 cubic inch engine, just like the previous Plymouth. And again, it uses all of the standard Chrysler engineering features: torsion bar suspension, asymmetric leaf springs, bulletproof torque flight transmission. And it was quite a bargain, considering this was basically a Chrysler with just Plymouth nameplates. And the Grand Fury was the top of the line Plymouth at the time, the Grand Fury Brougham with the vinyl roof. But it was a time when big cars were beginning to go out of style, and the Grand Fury only lasted another couple years before it disappeared.
The monster. He says it weighs 4,600 pounds.
46, yeah, well, like I say, you're getting a Chrysler for Plymouth prices. Oh, it has the optional vent windows too. Should mention that.
Too bad we don't still have those. Bring it up here. Come on. We may as well get all these Plymouths up here. Put them all up. Come on. Bring them up. Bring them up. I'm going to let the guys just talk about all of them. We'll just go right down the line. We got a 1966 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S Fastback, and Nicholas Valley Jean, and from Pinckney, Michigan. Where do you folks live in Pinckney? South of the high school. My cousin used to be the mayor of Pinckney, Vince LaRosa, way back when. So he used to have the tavern in the bowling alley that burnt down and isn't there anymore. Right? Okay, we got a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous Plymouth convertible, and I know this character. He's trouble. I got to watch him. Bob's a big supporter. Bob Walby and his wife are here. A 72 Plymouth Sport Fury convertible. He's from Brooklyn, where I live, in Brooklyn in the Irish Hills, and he's got a multitude of Chrysler products. That's all Bob has is Chrysler products, and you spent a lot of time and effort putting these babies back the way they're absolutely supposed to be. We may as well get this one last straggler up here. Get this police car up here. Come on.
Oh, you're going to give a ticket.
Let's see your window card. Window card. Your window card. Take the window card out of the envelope for me.
Cool.
Yeah, you can go back to your station here.
Yep, there, no, here. Okay, we got a 63 Plymouth Savoy station wagon. George Padick from Farmington Hills. George, I've often heard that sound, but never at a car show before. So pull yours up, pull yours up. Stop, stop.
Here comes the roach.
Give Bob a round of applause. This convertible won best in class.
All right.
Congratulations and thank you again for bringing it. Did we talk about this already?
No, in fact, we skipped the Valiants too. Let me just say a word or two about the Plymouth, the Plymouth Valiants. 1960, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler got worried about imported cars taking a larger part of the car market, so they came out with their own small cars. Ford had a Falcon, General Motors had a Corvair, and Chrysler had a Valiant. And very early on, Valiant became the gold standard for durability and reliability. Had a slant 6 engine that wouldn't give up, 3-speed torque flight, a unit body, and all the other Chrysler engineering features. And it remained a popular compact car for a long time. In fact, it was still standing after the Falcons and Corvairs went away. 1966, it was the last year for that Valiant. And the Barracuda was an offshoot of the Valiant, just like the Mustang was an offshoot of the Ford. And it actually got to the market a little bit before the Mustang did. And people have speculated that if the Barracuda had been more popular, we'd be calling those cars fish cars instead of pony cars. But it wasn't. Now, the car in front of me is a 1962 Plymouth Sport Fury. 62 was the first year for Chrysler's B-body, which was a little smaller than the previous cars, a much more straightforward unit body design, 116-inch wheelbase instead of the 119 that big Plymouths had, or the 122 or 126 that the Chryslers had. These cars were considerably smaller than their Ford and Chevrolet competition, and that led to the fact that initially they were not that successful in the marketplace, even though they were, again, outstanding cars, and like the Valiants, were known for durability and reliability. This particular Sport Fury is also known for performance, which was another attribute of the B-body cars, is they accepted every engine Chrysler ever made in this time. And while they could have come, I think the Sport Fury could have come with a 318, and the lesser B-bodies came with slant 6s. This one has a 426 wedge, which was the largest engine available in these cars in 1962, which made it quite a performer. Oh, I'm sorry, I got it mixed up with another car. Well, it has a 361, also a big block Chrysler engine, which made it a great performer. And thanks for the correction.
You said that's the original upholstery. It's never been touched. It's gorgeous.
Yep.
So thanks, Bob, for bringing it. You can pull her ahead. All right, don't turn that siren on. Keep going. Keep going. You can keep going. Come on out. We're done with your class.
Okay, well, I was going to say something.
Okay, we're going into the brass era cars, so let's get them up here. That's good. Okay, we got a 1904 Sunset Surrey. This is Glenn Miller from Plymouth, and I guess you can't turn it off, so Lee, go ahead and tell them about it.
So this one proved to be a challenge to find out what it was, but fortunately there's a book called the Bewley Automotive Encyclopedia. Anyway, Sunset was established in 1900 in San Francisco as the Sunset Automobile Company. The first car was a steamer, but they soon transitioned to internal combustion with a front-mounted two-cylinder engine, two-stroke, and that was followed by a four-cylinder in 1906. The San Francisco earthquake of 1906 destroyed the factory, so they moved to San Jose and reincorporated as the Victory Motor Car Company, producing two- and three-cylinder cars. The production reached 8 cars per month by the end of 1908, and a new model in 1909 used a four-cylinder Continental engine. It became the California Automotive Company in 1912, and production continued until 1913. So after an earthquake, 2 moves, and 3 incorporations, the sun had set on the sunset.
Okay, go ahead and pull her out before you fixate everybody.
Oh, man.
Okay, stop right there.
Lady driver.
This lady, Dorothy Grace, is one of our staunch supporters. She's been bringing this car here for 20-some years. She's from Westland, and it's a 1908 Renault HE Roadster.
Yeah, Louis Renault founded his company beginning of the century and rapidly became one of France's largest automobile manufacturers. This Renault is quite an advanced car for its time. It has the engine in the front, of course, driving a transmission and a shaft drive to the rear wheels, which is a pattern, laid out a pattern that cars followed for the next century. Some of them still do. And HE was a very popular car. It was the basis for a lot of French taxi cabs, including the ones that saved Paris during World War I when they used a fleet of them to take the army to the front. In France, they weren't quite decided whether to have the steering wheel on the right or the left-hand side. Renault made cars both ways. Other companies in France did the same. Some of them clung to the right-hand steering, even after France was always a right-hand side of the road driver. So it's a pretty, like I say, they were a little eccentric that way. But this is a great example of a very early French car.
Lady driver. 2 lady drivers. Indeed. Oh, nice car. Really. I love these old cars. Me too.
Okay, let's see what we've got here. We've got a 1911 Regal LE Demi-Tonneau, and this is John Grace from Westland. My gosh, this guy's got a boatload of cars. Tell us about this unusual car.
Well, this Regal is not a Buick, as I'm sure John has had to explain many times. The Regal Car Company was another one of the small companies that started, in this case in Detroit. They made cars for a few years and finally expired due to competitive pressures. This car has a front engine and a shaft drive, but it has a transmission that's part of the rear axle, and which a few other cars did that too. Eventually that went out of style for a variety of reasons. But I believe this 4-cylinder engine and a 3-speed transmission, and just a fine example of an early American automobile from a very small car company. Demi-Tonneau, that means it's a Demi-Tonneau body style. That implies that the rear seat is removable. That part of the body is removable. You can see the joint between just ahead of the rear door to make it into a 2-seater if you were so inclined.
Beauty. Wow.
Hold it right there. Man, this thing is just gorgeous. Jerry Shostak the owner and driver of this vehicle, is on the board of directors with me at the Auto Museum, and Jerry's one of the big supporters of the museum, has been since day one. Jerry has put in a lot of time and effort in keeping our computer page up to date and current. Jerry's just an amazing guy. You got to get to know Jerry. Jerry is very, very, very talented and a wealth of knowledge. I'm being sincere. You are a great guy to have around. I'm just going to come over here. This is a 1912 Stearns Knight SK4 Touring, and Jerry's from Plymouth. Jerry, how many years have you owned this car? Since May. Well, okay, if that's what you say. So tell us about Jerry's car.
The Stearns Automobile Company started in Cleveland, 1900. They made cars all the way through 1929. They made conventional cars for quite a while, but early on, about 1911 or so, they adopted the Knight sleeve valve engine. And Knight created an engine that did not have valves in the conventional sense. It had sleeves that slid up and down next to the cylinder, and ports in the sleeves lined up with ports in the cylinder at the appropriate time to make the engine run. Kind of complicated. A number of other cars in the teens and 20s used the Knight engine. Even Daimler in England used the Knight engine. And the big advantage of the Knight engine was the quietness of it. It didn't have the valve clatter that other conventional engines did at the time. Notice this car is otherwise fairly conventional for its time, but notice the full elliptic rear springs to try and give a lower spring rate in the back to improve the riding comfort for the people in the back seat. If you've ever ridden in an old car in the back seat and it goes over a bump, you know you've gone over a bump if you're still in your seat. Now, anyhow, Stearns lasted till 1929. This was an expensive car. We're talking about $3,000 car, $3,000 or more, in a time when you could buy a Model A for $400.
Wow.
And it has a big engine, a 312 cubic inch four-cylinder engine, which before they had electric starters, that must have been quite the chore to crank start. Anyhow, great engine, great car.
This car weighs 6,000 pounds.
Whoa.
And because it's such a gorgeous car, the judges thought that Jerry is the class winner for this class. Give Jerry a round of applause, folks. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, what do we got here? A 1914 Overland 79R Touring Roadster. This is Dan Ernst from West Bloomfield. How many years have you owned this car? 6 now. You've had it here before.
No.
Not this one. Okay, I love the colors. Tell us about this unusual car.
So the Overland was a product of Willys-Overland Company, organized by John North Willie.
Thanks, Mark.
They were a very successful company in the early teens. They were number 2, in fact, in the industry, just behind Ford in this time frame. The 1914 Model 79 had a 35 horsepower 4-cylinder engine on 114-inch wheelbase. It was available in 3 body styles: the Roadster, shown here, and the Touring at $950, a Coupe at $1,550. But the latter did have electric starting and lighting from Gray & Davis, which was optional on these cars. Interestingly, their brochures indicate that on some models at least, the track was 56 inches, but it was 60 inches for the south markets in the United States. A 1914 brochure also noted that over 150,000 Overlands were now in use, and it was an indication of how successful Willys-Overland was in this time frame.
He says that at 45, 50 miles an hour, this car is extremely comfortable riding. He said it's a beautiful riding car.
And
Thank
it's
you for
certainly a
bringing
beautiful
it.
car.
Okay, stop right there. A 1919 Willys Knight Touring, and this is a 88-8 7-passenger Touring. It's got a V8 engine in it, and Greg Gumtower, the owner, is also a very big supporter of the museum. The car is absolutely stunning. I wish you folks could see up close the quality of the workmanship and the paint on this car. It's just gorgeous. How long have you owned this one, Greg?
15 years.
15 years, wow. Well, at any rate, the judges thought that your car was so exceptional that,
Yeah, you did.
at any rate, you won best in class. So give Greg a round of applause and let the judges tell you folks about Greg's car.
So John North Willys was a very strong proponent of the Knight engine. When he first started merchandising cars in 1916 under the Willys brand, before that had been Overlands, he introduced the Knight engine at the same time, and the Knight engines progressively advanced through the 1920s. He had a Falcon Knight, which was built for a short time in Ohio. He purchased the Stearns Company, which made the Stearns Knight, as Bob had talked about a few minutes ago. The Willys Knight stayed in production through about 1933. That introduced a poppet valve 6-cylinder engine in 1931 under the Willys name. But by 1933, the company was in such financial straits that they decided that they needed to phase out the Knight engine cars. And you might say by that time, the day of the Knight had passed.
What a play on words, and I thought we got rid of guys like you. Okay, pull her ahead. Thanks, Greg. Pull this thing up here. That's good right there. I want the judges to get a good look at this 1930 Willys Knight Great 6 66B sedan. And this is Dave Leipold from Milan. How long have you owned this car? 13 years. You've had it here before. You have. You've driven this car 63,000 miles all over the country.
Wow.
That's worth a round of applause right
Great
there
guy.
in itself.
Great
Go ahead.
guy.
So the Model 66 had been initially introduced in 1923 with a 236 cubic inch 60 horse engine. The 66A came along in 1927, and the 29 was also called the Great 6, and that Great 6 nomenclature continued for a couple of years thereafter. It was now up to 255 cubic inches and 70 horsepower. This particular model would have been on a 120-inch wheelbase. There was a plaid side version, also known as the Great 6. So this is indication of what a nice car Willys was still producing in this time frame, despite the challenges of the Depression. As I recall, the owner indicated a lot of the paint on this car is still original. And quite an elegant looking car and a very fine product from Willys-Overland.
Oh, this thing here is beautiful. Stop right there. That's great. Don't move. We got a 1931 Willys 6 97 Sport convertible, and this is Ed Hanish from, where are you from? Alabama, all the way from Alabama. Is this your first time here? No, you have other vehicles? I thought so. All right, tell us about his car, guys.
So as I had mentioned, by the time that Depression started really taking a grip on automakers, Willys determined that a phase out of the Knight engine might be appropriate and poppet valve engines to be introduced. So this actually has an L-head 6-cylinder engine, normal poppet valve, 193 cubic inches, 65 horsepower. It's on a 110-inch wheelbase. The car was available in 6 different body styles. Notably, all the sports roadsters were in the two-tone green shown here, and the owner advised us that on this particular car, a great deal of the paint on this car, in fact, is still the original paint. Certainly a testament to the durability of the car, and a quite nice-looking, compact vehicle, but ultimately it did help Willis stave off receivership until 1933, which was fortunate, but ultimately the company did enter receivership in 1933.
Pull yours ahead for me, sir. Just walk with me. Stop right there. That's good. I want the judges to get a good look at this car. He registered late, guys, and he did not get a window placard, so I'm going to let him tell you the year, make, and the model.
This is a 1953 Willys Aero Eagle.
Where are you from, sir? Your name and your city.
I'm Jess Neely from South Lyon.
Hey, Jess, go ahead, guys.
So, before the war, Willys had continued to produce passenger cars up through 1942. It was called the Willys AmeriCar. After the war, they leveraged the Jeep for all their production. The CJ Jeeps, standing for civilian Jeeps, starting in 1946, came out with a Willys station wagon shortly thereafter, and then the Jeepster in 1948. Several people in the company aspired to re-enter the passenger car business, which they did in 1952 with a car called the Willys Aero. Initially, it was two-door and four-door sedans. The two-door hardtop appeared, as you can see here, branded as the Eagle. 1953 was their anniversary year, and they had a gold-plated badge on the front of the car and at the rear of the car. A very nice-looking execution of the compact car, probably the nicest, in fact, among the Hudson Jet, Nash Rambler, and other cars of this vintage. Unfortunately, they didn't have the volume to sustain the business. The car actually had a very interesting second life. When Kaiser Willys exited the car business in 1955 here, they sent the Kaiser dies to Argentina and started producing the Kaiser Carabellas there in 1958. For the Willys, they sent it down to Brazil, and they produced this car in Brazil for a number of years. Had several facelifts by Brooks Stevens. They called it the Itamaraty after a number of years. It was the premium car in Brazil, in fact, in that time frame. And Ford eventually purchased Willys in Brazil, and Ford built the Itamaraty for several years after their acquisition of the business. So the car had quite a successful career, although not in the context of what the company management might have imagined at the outset.
Thank you for bringing it. Hope to see you next year. All right. Let's get these Pontiacs up here. Come on. Let's get these 50s models Pontiac. We got 3 of them before we get into the muscle car here. Let's just get the 50s and the 40s up here. Stop right there. God, this car is absolutely stunning. The colors are stunning. The upholstery is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. Now, I notice the fit and the finish on the front of this is a little tight. Was that commonplace? Really? He said he was trying to put a sun visor on it, and it was so tight he couldn't get it to work. So at any rate, we've got a 1968 Pontiac Silver Streak, and it's a 2-door, obviously, and it's Ron Gross from Flat Rock.
68.
I just loved this chrome work on the hood, the bright work on the hood. That made Pontiac stand out. And we've got a similar one back here. More chrome work on the hood. We've got a 52 Pontiac Chieftain Deluxe 8. This is John Dombrowski from Willys. Nice old car. I bet this thing...
Hold on. Yeah. Don't let him drive away yet.
Don't drive away. Stay right where you're at, because the historians want to tell the people in the bleachers about your car. So just stay put until I give you the green light. Nice car. Okay, we're going to get one more Plymouth, or Pontiac rather, a 50s. And this is a 55 Pontiac Chieftain. And apparently they made 91,000 of these babies, and they cost about almost $2,300 new. More bright work on the hood. Pontiac was famous for it. A 55 Pontiac Chieftain Deluxe 4-door, and this is Gene Hunter from Windsor, Ontario. Hold your GTO back. We'll let the historians tell the folks in the bleachers about these 3 50s cars. 40s and 50s cars.
Yeah, In the 1920s, General Motors had a range of cars from Chevrolet to Cadillac, but they began to feel there were gaps in there that needed to be filled. And the second in line at GM was the Oakland, and it was quite a large jump in price from a Chevrolet to an Oakland. So they decided that Oakland needed a companion car, they called them. Cadillac and Oldsmobile and Buick also had companion cars. And Oakland's companion car was named the Pontiac, because the Oakland was made in Pontiac. And anyhow, the first Pontiac was a 6-cylinder car, which made it a step above a Chevrolet, which was a 4-cylinder car at the time. And I remember they had an emblem on the front profile of Chief Pontiac, and the slogan, Chief of the Low-Price Sixes. Well, it was quite successful, remained successful, and it grew with the other GM cars. In the mid-30s, Virgil Exner was working at GM Styling, and he put on the chrome stripe on the front and the back of the 36 Pontiacs, and people liked it, but Harley Earl, who was the boss, didn't like it, so he fired Exner, who went on to great things at other car companies. But the chrome stripes, the silver streaks, continued. This 48 Pontiac, I'm not sure if it has a 6 or an 8. It's a 6. Most of them were 6s. The hydromatic transmission was available in Pontiac for the first time in 1948. Is it possible this car has a hydromatic? It does. That's an early Pontiac hydromatic. Now, this 52 Pontiac, basically it was a new body in 1949 for GM cars, and this is the Pontiac version of it. Again, it shares the basic body with the Chevrolet, but it's trimmed much more nicely and has much more upscale features compared to a Chevrolet. Is it possible this was an 8? Okay, this one, Pontiac held on to straight 8s as long as Packard did through 1954, and this one here is a straight 8. Possible to have a hydromatic? No hydromatic. I'm a hydromatic historian, I always ask. But again, these were very successful cars, and they were known for being, durable and reliable, just like Chrysler's Plymouths were. People bought these cars because they lasted a long time, and they just flat worked real well. Now, following that was a 1955 Pontiac. Well, that was a big makeover for Pontiac, and all the other GM cars too, for that matter. But for Pontiac, it was a huge difference. It became much more modern, wraparound windshield. It used the Chevrolet body, but it still had a lot of differentiation. And just for good luck, they doubled the number of silver streaks. And maybe most important of all, it had a V8 engine for the first time. Well, technically, they had a V8 for a year back in the 30s, and it wasn't very successful. But the V8 in 1955 was the basis for Pontiac V8s for decades, and many, many great cars. 55 was the first year for the V8. It was yes, it was a 287 cubic inch engine, but it rapidly grew. Eventually, that V8 was stretched to 455. About 160, I believe. I believe there were probably options to make more, but that was the base engine. So, anyhow, it started Pontiac on a revival that lasted them a good long time.
I was a traffic cop before I took this job on. Come on, keep it moving, keep it moving, keep that thing moving over that rubber hump there. We don't want it to come apart again. Keep going, keep going. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for bringing it. All right, John Shook, get that hot rod up here.
All right.
God, this is a gorgeous car. Stop right there. John is also on the board of directors at the museum with me, and John does a lot of volunteer work at the museum. He's a major, major asset. And ever since I've known John, he's had several cars, but he's always talked about having a GTO. there you have it. It's a 64, and John's from right here in Ipsy. How many years have you owned this car now? 5 years. This is the, give me the engine size and
389.
it's a 389 with 3 2-barrels, so it's got tri-power. Go ahead, it's all you guys.
1964, GM introduced a line of intermediate cars. They had smaller cars like the original Buick Special and Pontiac Tempest, but they were smaller unibody cars. In '64, GM essentially created the intermediate sized cars. Most of them had 115-inch wheelbase, and they were good cars. Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick had it. Well, Pontiac had one. Somebody at Pontiac said, you know, we could stuff the big Pontiac engine into this intermediate car and it would probably go like hell. And that's what they did. They called it the GTO. And this one has the famous 3 2-barrel carburetor setup. Probably got a 4-speed. And it was such a iconic car for the time that everybody else copied the idea of the muscle car, started sticking bigger engines into smaller cars. And Ronnie and the Daytonas even wrote a song about it called Little GTO. Yeah, great car.
Give John a round of applause because he took best in the Pontiac class. Go ahead, John. Thank you.
I got a 66.
Do you?
What it do?
389 also?
Come on, bring that baby up here. Come on, bring it up here.
Yeah, in November. November
God, I love
65.
these old Oldsmobiles. I never
Oh,
thought
442.
Plymouth, Pontiac, Oldsmobiles would be things of the past, but I'm dating myself. A 65 Oldsmobile Cutlass 442. Before I go any further, tell the crowd what the 442 stood for.
4-speed.
Stood for 4-barrel, 4-speed, dual exhaust.
That a boy. Thank you, Ed. Okay, this is owned by Charles Sora from Maybe, Michigan. It's a gorgeous car. I just love the red line tires. They set it off with those chrome wheels. Tell us about it.
So after Pontiac introduced the GTO in 1964, it didn't take their companion divisions at GM to start copying them, or emulating them at least. Oldsmobile's entry was the 442. It uses the intermediate body shell that Bob just talked about that had been introduced in '64 with a minor freshening here for 1965. For '65, this car used a small bore version of the brand new Oldsmobile 425 engine. Quite a good engine in both versions, 345 horsepower. And notably, Oldsmobile wanted their cars to handle on roads, not just in a straight line. So Oldsmobile paid a lot of attention to the suspension system. They had front and rear sway bars, for instance, which their competition didn't have the rear bars. Redline tires were part of the package, heavy-duty suspension, heavy-duty frame, and heavy-duty cooling. You could get the package on any F-85 Cutlass Coupe and convertible, and they spilled a total of $25,000 in 1965 of the 442s.
You can pull her head, sir. It's a stunning car. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for supporting us. All right, bring that silver one up. That's good right there. Okay, we've got a 75 Pontiac Grand Am, 2-door Colonnade. This is Jim Crichton from Ann Arbor. How many years have you owned this car? 15 years. You've had it here before, haven't you? You have, for sure. I don't remember sunroofs in cars like these, but apparently it happened, so tell us about it.
Oh, this is on the third generation of General Motors' intermediate-sized platform, and they call it a colonnade because of the steeply slanted B-pillar just behind the driver's door. It was a distinctive styling feature of all of the intermediates that year. The Grand Am has an interesting name. They used the Grand from the Grand Prix and the Am from the Trans Am, and they created the Grand Am. It was intended to be sort of a performance luxury car, smaller than the Grand Prix, but more drivable, better handling. And many of them had big engines. like a 455 cubic inch version of Pontiac's V8 engine. This one has a 455. That's quite an engine. And like I say, it's styling. Most of these cars, most of the Colonnade cars had quarter windows, but this car has those louvers to cover the window to give it a distinctive look. And the very distinctive fastback look on these cars made them stand out, just the way the roof flows into the trunk. The Grand Am was only, this generation of the Grand Am was only made for 3 years, and I believe 75 was the last year. Like a lot of cars, the name came back later on, but it just wasn't the same.
Let's see if we can beat the rain, guys. It's clouding up. Come on, bring that Tornado up here.
Tornado.
That's good right there. Perfect. A diesel Oldsmobile. Good Lord.
Remember
The
those?
Tornado Brougham diesel. This is Bruce Paulson from Howell. How many years have you owned this hot rod? Since December of last year? Oh, the year 15. I got you. At any rate, it's a big, heavy car. These are front-wheel drive, correct? Go ahead.
So GM began their downsizing program in 1977 with their full-size cars. 1978, it was the intermediates. And 1979 was the turn of the personal luxury vehicles, the Tornado, Eldorado, and Riviera. This is the Oldsmobile interpretation of the new downsized car. It still used the north-south engine front drive power pack that Tornado had pioneered in 1966. A 350 V8 was standard. The car had shed 900 pounds in the downsizing process, and it was now on a 114-inch wheelbase. Their sales volume doubled from 25,000 to 50,000 for 1979. This particular car continued through 1985 and was extremely successful. Unfortunately, Oldsmobile did a bit of an experiment, if you will, with the diesel. They took their gasoline 350 V8 and dieselized it, and it first appeared in the 1978 full-size 88s and 98s, went into the Tornado this year. The engine eventually had most of its teething issues addressed, but in the intervening time it built up such a poor reputation that it really killed the image of diesels in this market, and certainly any GM diesels. GM later came out with V6 diesels, other displacement V8 diesels, but unfortunately the early problems on the 78 to 80 versions of the diesel was its death knell.
Well, the judges thought that your car was best in class, so let's give this man a round of applause. You can pull her ahead. Thank you for bringing it. Another familiar face. Get that hot rod up here, Art. That's good. Don't pull it too far ahead. I want those guys in them bleachers to see it. Art Boucher and his wife Jackie have been friends of my wife and I for a number of years. Art lives in South Lyon. This is a 79 Pontiac Trans Am, and it is absolutely a stunning car. It's just beautiful.
In 1964, 64 and a half, 65, Ford came out with a Mustang, and it was a tremendous success. I mean, it just outshone every other sporty car. So GM couldn't let that go without notice. 67, they came out with the Camaro and the Firebird. Firebird was a more luxurious and maybe performance-oriented version of the Camaro. 1970, they came out with the second generation Camaro and Firebird. And this is a good example of the second generation car. Longer, lower, stunningly styled. Somewhere along in the second generation, they added the wraparound rear windshield, rear rim. Around 1975, they added the wraparound rear window, and basically made a few other changes. But by 1980, the Pontiacs had, some of them had Pontiac engines and some had Oldsmobile engines, and this one, I believe, has a 400 cubic inch Pontiac engine. Yep. And does it have a hydromatic transmission? A turbo hydromatic transmission. The Trans Am versions not only did they spend a lot of effort to make them fast, they spent a lot of effort to make them handle, and they were basically eventually became better handling cars than the comparable Camaros because of that. Pontiac pioneered using rear sway bars and much larger roll bars front and back, bigger tires. Note the attractive aluminum wheels on this car, also another Pontiac feature. So.
Let's get these two plastic body jobs up here. Come on, bring them up here. That's good right there, ma'am. Stop it right there. Let's see your window card. Atta girl. An 87 Pontiac Fiero GT. This is Richard and Kay Gafford from Saline. How many years have you folks owned this car? 7 years. See how we're holding up pretty good, oh? You like it? Is it fun to drive? Yeah? Okay. Let's see what this guy's got. We'll let the guys talk about both of them together. We got an 86 Pontiac Fiero GT Fastback, William Lockness, and he's from Jonesville, Michigan. Love Jonesville. Olivia's Restaurant. Love it. Go ahead, guys.
1984, Pontiac introduced the Fiero. It was quite a radical car. Pontiac had been showing sporty car prototypes for a while, but 1984 they introduced the Camaro. Radical car for America, mid-engine car. First American production mid-engine car. And quite an unusual space frame construction. There's a big steel frame underneath all those plastic panels, and the plastic panels are just attached to it. Quite a complex manufacturing process to make that all happen. But I remember being in the Fiero factory when they were making these cars and being quite impressed at the basically automation that put these bodies together. The first cars had the Iron Duke 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engines, and basically they used some of the transaxle components and suspension parts from the GM X-body cars, front-wheel drive cars. It was a very clever use of existing components. Later on they had the 2.8 liter V6 engine, also from the GM X-body cars, installed, which made these cars real performers. They again, they were quite agile handling cars, and as they went on, some of them became even better with special suspension packages. There were subtle differences in styling. This is a GT, which has a different rear roof configuration compared to the original Fiero. All very, very handsome and very striking cars. They made them through 1988, and basically the demand just kind of tapered off. Plus, it was expensive to manufacture. So, basically, am I looking at a 4-cylinder one? Or that's a 6-cylinder one. Good.
You can pull it ahead, dear.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing it. Go ahead, sir. Go fast so you get over that hump. There you go. Atta girl. Keep moving. Bring it up here, sir. Let's bring the Saab, stay back. Let's bring the Pontiac up here.
It's a Citroen.
Citroen, I'm sorry. My eyesight's not what it used to be. A 1988 Pontiac Sunbird. This is Emma Grace from Westland. Emma, have you had this car here before? You have. Why are you so shy? Tell us about Emma's car. Thank you for bringing it.
Well, in the early 80s, General Motors decided they needed yet another small car, and these were the J body cars. All 5 divisions got them: Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, and even Cadillac. There was a Cadillac J car for a while. But the Pontiac versions were considerably sportier than the others, and basically had a lot of interesting styling features to set them off from the Chevys and the Oldsmobiles. The partially covered headlights I thought were kind of interesting. If you turn the headlights on with those little doors open, yep, there they go. Yeah, quite a nice touch. And Pontiac put a lot of effort into styling the wheels on their cars during this period, including these. These are quite distinctive wheels, and I think they even copied those on some later and larger Pontiacs too, that style. Most of these cars had 4-cylinder overhead cam engines. Some had a turbocharged version that was really fast for its time. But this isn't a turbocharged one, is it? No, this is a regular one. And they used a front-wheel drive transaxle 3-speed transmission, also made by General Motors right here in Ypsilanti. So, nice small car.
Okay, you can pull it ahead. We're going to get all these Citroens up here. Keep yours up here too. Come on. Bring her up. Bring her up. Come on, guys. You're giving me a workout. Come on. We'll get all these similar manufacturers together, and we'll let the guys tell you folks in the bleachers about these cars. I'm going to go right down the line and hit all 4 of them. With any kind of luck, we're going to beat the rain. Okay, we got a 72 Citroen DS 4-door, and this is Steve Bandy from Livonia. How many years have you owned this? 8. Okay, we've got a really nice example here. This is a 72. This is Peter Bandy again from Taylor. Nice car. Like the color. Okay, we're going to get these 2 older ones. We got a 86 Citroen. Oh, these are the newer ones. Good Lord. Benjamin and Elaine Boyle from North Branch. And let's get down here. This one here is right-hand drive. This is a 79, and this is Benjamin and Elaine Boyle from North Branch, Michigan. Okay, guys, I'm tossing it up to you.
Citroens have always been one of my favorite cars, just because for a long time they just did things their own way. The company started with Andre Citroën in 1919. During the war, he made a fortune manufacturing chevron-shaped gears. And so when he started his car company, he took the double chevrons, 2 chevrons as his emblem, and it has remained ever since. And he made low-priced cars at first, became the French Model T, sometimes called. And he got into medium-priced cars. He made the first practical production front-wheel drive car in 1934, and they called it the Traction Avant, which was sort of French for front-wheel drive. Dynamite car. I kind of wish we'd get one of these some days. But after the war, the Traction Avant was beginning to look kind of dated, and Citroën himself had lost the company in the 30s and passed away. Michelin, the ownership of the company passed to Michelin, and I think their whole management theory at Citroën was make anything you want as long as it goes out of here with 5 Michelin tires. Well, after the war, they came out with a radical car, the DS19, and the one right in front of me is the DS21, which is a later version of the same car with a slightly bigger engine and more headlights. It has so many unique features, it's hard to know where to start, but he was just showing off the hydro-pneumatic suspension, which uses compressed nitrogen in a sphere as a springing agent, and hydraulic cylinders connected to the wheels, and by varying the pressure and the amount of fluid in the hydraulic cylinders, you can change the height of the car. It'll go down lower than that too, and in fact, as these cars get old, they get down lower than that when you park them all by themselves. But it was quite anyhow, the goal was to create a really smooth ride. So these cars are very low spring rates. For their time, they were just incredibly smooth riding cars. Charles de Gaulle, president of France, was partial to these, and he had a series of them where they armored the C-pillars so that to minimize the chance of assassination, as in fact almost happened. You know, before he pulls it ahead, can you show him the steering wheel? Among other things, Citroën decided to have a one-spoke steering wheel. Can guys see that? That's I just thought that was just neat. They just did these things, I think, just because they could. So. Now this is a Citroën SM, and it shares a lot of the unique engineering features of that DS, but it's wrapped in a much more handsome body. It's a much more expensive car, basically a GT car, This one could go up and down too if he was inclined. For a little while, Citroen and Maserati were merged, and the SM on this, sometimes people say it stands for Sports Maserati, because it has a Maserati V6 engine, a 4-cam 2.7 liter V6 with I think 3 carburetors. It's a very complex engine, very stylish Citroen, one of the nicest looking Citroens they ever made. And it has, among other things, a unique steering system that is, it's not just powered, but it's power centering. No matter, even if you're standing still, if you take your hand off the steering wheel, it returns the wheels to straight ahead. Gave it a really unique road feel and a very responsive steering. And if you get used to driving one of these, at the time anyhow, other cars felt awfully clumsy. This was quite the car. Okay, very good.
All right, bring these two little guys up here. That's good, right there. Stop right there. Let's see your window placard. A 1986 Citroen 2CV 4-door. This is Ben and Elaine Boyle from North Branch, Michigan. And we'll get this one here while we're at it. This is a 79 Citroen Diane. Is that Diane? How do you pronounce it?
It's a Diane.
Diane, okay. And this is, again, Ben and Elaine Boyle. Tell us about these unique cars.
Well, right after the war, France was poor. They basically, the country was devastated. Nobody had any money. Citroen decided they needed to make a really basic car suitable for French farmers and other people with not much money who needed a car. The result was the Citroen 2CV. And typically, at Citroen, they didn't go by anybody else's playbook. This car is just full of interesting engineering features. Yeah. It has a 2-cylinder air-cooled engine and front-wheel drive with inboard brakes, and to reduce the unsprung weight, improve the ride, and very, very lightweight car. It has interconnected front and rear wheel suspension, leading arm in the front, trailing arm in the back, and a spring that basically is pulling them together to give it a really good ride over terrible roads. And this is a late model one. The original ones had a 375cc engine, about 29 cubic inches. This is a fairly late model one, just before they quit making them, I think. And it has a big engine. It's got the 600cc engine, about 36 cubic inches. And I think it makes about 16 horsepower. And yeah, notice the interesting window mechanism. Other cars, the windows went up and down. These cars, they folded up or folded down. Sometimes they were known to fold down when you were driving and hit you in the elbow, which woke you up. And they had a canvas roof that folded back, so you could carry incredible amounts of stuff in these cars, sticking up through the roof. They're very small, as you can see. They had nominally a 95-inch wheelbase, but because of the suspension design, as you loaded the car down, the wheels got farther apart by quite a bit, actually. So basically, with people in the car, that might be a 100-inch wheelbase car. Oh, and because of the soft suspension, its attitude would change a lot. So they made the headlights adjustable from inside the car. Those headlights are mounted on the bar, and when you turn this knob in the car, there's a little worm gear that rotates that bar the headlights are on, so you could always keep the headlights adjusted. He's doing it now, you can barely see it. Just full of interesting features. The Diane was a little more upscale version. Note the more conventional headlights and the more, I hate to say more conventional body, but it's a little fuller. It shares the same wheelbase, but it has a bigger body with a little more passenger room in it. Still has the rolling back fabric roof. And it came from the start with the big 600cc engine. Yeah.
Just a quick note that You guys in K1 is here. We need the K2 class, and we need the L class, the post-World War II Independents. So field monitors, get them on their way up here. Okay, we've got 1959. I'm not even going to try. Pronounce this for me.
Packard.
Packard, okay.
Packard.
But it's Dinah's Z16. Okay, this is Ken Nelson from South Line. If you say so, Ken, you're the boss. Tell them about Ken's car.
Packard was a long-time, old-line French car manufacturer, one of the first. And they made largely middle-priced, medium-sized cars to large cars for a long time. After the war, they really didn't survive too well. They wound up getting bought out by Citroën. But along the way, they designed this economy car, small car for them, very unique car. It has an 800cc two-cylinder engine, which by 2CV standards is a pretty big banger. 850, he says, oh, I wouldn't want to short him 50 cc's. A lot of aluminum construction. It's a front-wheel drive car. You can see a lot of it is aluminum. Even the bumpers and the wheel covers are aluminum. And they made various versions of it. This is a Z16. Eventually, like I say, Citroën owned them and controlled them, and eventually Citroën decided that this was competing just a little too much with their own cars, and the Packard, the Dyna Packard, went away. It's pronounced Packard because the French don't say H. So that's, if you ever have to speak to a Frenchman, that's important to know. Anyhow, 1,890 cars. Yep.
Okay, stop right there. We've got a 1990 Peugeot 405S. This is Steve Terry from Frazer, Michigan. Tell us about Steve's car.
Oh, Peugeot is another long-time French automobile maker. They actually started out making pepper grinders back in the 19th century. They graduated to making bicycles, and finally they got into making automobiles. And they made cars for a long time, lots of different styles. They sold cars here in the 50s and 60s, and then they basically left the car market here. They returned late 80s with cars like this, the 405. It basically this was their attempt to return to the American market. It's a front-wheel drive car, and it shares the underpinnings with a lot of other European cars, actually. And some of them, if it has a V6, it shares that with Renault and Volvo. This has the smaller 1.9 four-cylinder engine. Yep. Anyhow, yeah, they share some of the underpinnings with Alfa Romeo sedans as well. It wasn't all that popular in America, and Peugeot left, but it was real popular in the rest of the world. And in fact, in parts of the world, they're still making this car. Now, this particular car, the owner bought it new and has owned it since 1990, and still uses it, and it still works quite well. So.
Let's get these Mercurys up here. Come on, bring them up here. All of them.
They're not Mercuries.
Well, they're Monarchs. They're Canadian Mercurys. I know what I got. Come on, bring them up here. Close enough. Bring them up here. Come on.
Call it a
Bring 'em up.
Mercury, you might run
Bring
you
that
over.
Capri up here too. Bring that one up here too. That's good. What a gunboat. Look at the size of this, the sheer size of this car. This is a 59 Monarch Mark II Lucerne, and this is Joe Romanowski, and Joe's been here, God, I can't begin to tell you how many times. He's in the back car. I know, but I knew he owned two of them. So we're going to give Joe his credit where credit's due. How you doing, Joe? Good. This is a 60 Monarch Lucerne, and it's just, this car is stunning. Tell us about these two big boats.
Well, these cars are in with the foreign car category because they're Canadian cars. They may look like Mercuries, but they're not. They're both Monarchs. They were both manufactured in Canada because up until 1965 in the auto pack, it was very expensive to import cars from the U.S. into Canada. So Ford and other companies made cars in Canada for the Canadian market. Again, this looks like a 1959 Mercury, and mechanically, basically it is. But the Canadian versions had different names and different trim and a lot of other... yeah, and anyhow, this particular one has a 383 engine, which is not a Chrysler engine. It's a form of the Lincoln engine that was used. Some of these cars had engines as big as 430 cubic inches, but this is a 383. And they were reasonably successful in Canada. The Auto Pact in 1965, which meant that you could bring American cars in and out of Canada without any penalty, basically ended these special Canadian model cars. The second one is a 1960 version. Again, same story, but much toned down styling, not nearly as flamboyant. This Monarch would be right at home in America in 1959. Yep. So, great car.
Get a running start so you make it over that rubber hump. Before he goes too far with this white one, give this man a round of applause because he won best in his class. Congratulations. Thank you for bringing your cars. We really appreciate all the support over the years. Oh, Mercury Capri. Stop right there.
Baby Mercury.
German built? Yep. Okay. Where's your window placard? There we go. A 1974 Mercury Capri Sport Coupe. Bill Hicks from Denver, Pennsylvania. Did you drive this thing here? You did. Give this man a round of applause just for that alone. Tell us about his car, guys.
So the success of the Mustang that Bob mentioned earlier here in the United States led Ford of Europe to introduce an equivalent type car in Europe in very late 60s called the Capri. In mid-1970, Ford North America determined to import it, starting for the 71 model year. It's on 101-inch wheelbase. It initially came with a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine, 4-speed transmission, power disc brakes. The 2-liter and the automatic were introduced midway through the 71 model year. It actually set a first-year import sales record. It was very successful in the early 1970s. They added a 2.6-liter V6 as an option in February of 1972. For 73, the bumpers, in line with regulations, were extended as shown on this model. It received a blackout grille, new instrument panel, and revised tail lamps. Also, the 1.6-liter engine disappeared at that time because of the mounting problems associated with emissions on small engines. This Gen 1 car continued through 1974 model year into 1975. They came up with a Gen 2 model starting for the 76 model year, continued that into 77. There was no 78, and then in 1979 it adopted the Fox platform out of North America, and it was a companion car to the Ford Mustang.
Before we go too much further, for you guys out in the field, we need the L-Class cars to start coming around the circle to get up the pass and review. If you're in Class L, get your cars up here. Okay, you can pull her ahead, sir. All right, let's get these car boats up here. These are great cars. One year, one of them went down in the river and put on a display for us, but we won't ask them to do that today. Okay, thank you. I just got word L cars are in line. Stop right there. Mark comes all the time. Mark is a fixture at the museum. He's been a big supporter since day one. Mark Amsdell is from Dexter. Dexter's a great town. Love the pub. Absolutely love the pub. How long have you owned this car? 25 years. As a matter of fact, yours is the car that was in the river one year. I know that. Okay, hang on. Just don't go anywhere. Bring your red one up a little bit closer for me. Okay, that's good. Let's see what you got for me. Okay, we've got a 67 Amphicar 770. This is Mark Richardson, also from Dexter. You guys, you Dexter boys love these cars, don't you? Okay, tell us about the cars.
Well, you know, some days you don't know whether you want to drive or go boating. And so, anyhow, if you've got one of these, you're covered. Amphicar was basically, as you can see, was made to be both an automobile and a boat. They started in 1961. The Quant Group made these cars. Quant later acquired BMW and got really rich on those. But as you can see, they basically are an amphibious car. The engine's in the rear. It's a 1150cc Triumph engine, and it's geared to both the wheels and the propellers. You can see these cars are kitted out with full Coast Guard regulation lights and so on horns. And I don't know if you can see there's a propeller in the back for those times when you want to be in the water. They steer in the water with the front wheels. The front wheels work as rudders. So it's not that difficult to actually drive. They made them from 61 through 67. Through 68, sorry. And they found a small but steady market through then. I mean, basically, it was a one-of-a-kind kind of car.
Hold her hand, Mark. Thank you. I love these little cars. As a matter of fact, I owned a white one. These little cars are absolutely bullets on wheels. Let's see your window placard. This is an 89 Mercure XR4 Ti. I sold insurance for 30 years before I retired 16, 17 years ago. And one day this lady called my office and I asked her, she said, I'd like a quote on car insurance. And I said, well, what kind of a car do you have? She says, I have an X-Roddy. I said, pardon me? She said, I have an X-Roddy. I said, I don't understand what you're saying. She said, I've got a Mercury X-Roddy. I said, okay, now I know what you mean. At any rate, this is Dan Boehm from Plymouth. Dan, this is a stunning looking little car.
So the Mercure was a brand sold through Lincoln Mercury dealers between 85 and 89, targeted at import intenders, and the name Mercure is German for Mercury. There were two models, the three-door XR4 Ti, which came out in 1985, and a five-door Scorpio that came out in mid-87 for the 88 model year. The XR4 Ti was quite unique from the parent car, which was the European Sierra, and because of that uniqueness, it was assembled at Carmen in West Germany. The Scorpio was more similar to the Ford Europe Scorpio, so it was assembled at the main plant in Cologne, West Germany. When the XR4 Ti came out in 85, it featured a 2.3 turbo, which was shared with the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. It offered 175 horsepower with a 5-speed manual, 145 horsepower with a 3-speed automatic. The exterior features included the unique 3-window side profile, a biplane rear spoiler, gray lower body side cladding, and 14-inch phone dial wheels. In 86, it got a high-mount stop lamp in accordance with federal regulations. In 87, you could get a black or a white monochrome version with new 15-inch wheels and the antenna moved to the backlight. In 1988, the red monochrome version, which you can see here, came out. It had a single plane spoiler rather than the biplane. It had BBS-style wheels and 150-mile-an-hour speedometer. And cumulatively, over the life of the XR4 Ti, they built 42,000 units.
Let's get these two old touring cars up here, both of you. The gray one and the burgundy one. That's good. That's good. Can you turn it off so we don't asphyxiate the people in the bleachers? Attaboy, thank you. That's good. Great. Now let's see what we got. We got a 1922 Oldsmobile 47T Touring. This is Joe Rusty Berg from Highland, Michigan. I got you. Nice car. Beautiful paint. And we've got a 1921 Oldsmobile 46 5-passenger Touring. Scott, pronounce your last name. Merdeza. Okay. Well, okay. It's a 7-passenger because he does have jump seats here, but if the card said 5, I was just reading off the card, but it is a 7-passenger indeed. Tell us about him.
So the first car, the 1922 Model 47, the 47 series had been introduced in 1921, and it would have been considered like a light 8 version at Oldsmobile. It shared its 115-inch wheelbase with the Model 43A 4-cylinder car. The 47 itself sold 2,200 units out of 21,000 units for 1922. It used a 53 horsepower, 234 cubic inch V8, and the 63. Okay, see, they're even more powerful than we thought.
It's a rocket ship.
The Touring was actually the most popular body style, sold for $14.95, and in fact, not this example, but they had a unique Super Sport model that year, which had disc wheels, bob fenders, cast step plates, wind wings, and a very unique color scheme. You see very few of those, but you also see very few of these. So thank you for bringing it. The second car is a 1921 Model 46 5- and 7-passenger Touring. It was their high series car in 1946. It was offered from 1920 through 1922. They built 745 Model 46s out of 19,000 cars this year. It used a Model 209 Northway 58 horsepower, 247 cubic inch V8. It had a 2-piece block and 2 main bearings. 633 Tourings such as this were built at a price of $18.75, which was pretty substantial in that time frame, but then again, it was a pretty substantial car.
That's good. Stop it right there. Good job. It'll help me. Okay, we got a 1963 TR3B, stock running gear, Pat Eklund from Rochester Hills, and geranium is the color. So tell us about this geranium car.
Triumph was another English car company, long-time car company, and they made both sedans and some sports cars. Well, after the war, Americans had been exposed to sports cars in Europe, and after the war there was a demand, so a number of English companies started selling sports cars here. MG was the first selling MG TCs and TDs and TFs, which were kind of old-fashioned looking cars. Triumph got into the act, first with a TR2, which is very similar to this car, and then they kind of upgraded it and smoothed out some of the styling details, put a grille on the front, and made a TR3. These cars became very popular. They were good performers. It's a body frame car, which is a little unusual today anyhow, and they made those for quite a while until they eventually, into the 60s, they came out with the TR4, which was basically an upgrade, new body of the same similar car. Anyhow,
What would a car like this have sold for back new in the day?
about 1,600, I believe.
That sound about right? $2,000.
16,
Okay.
$2,000, yeah.
You can pull her ahead, sir. Thank you for bringing it. Keep going. Just roll her over. Keep going. Don't stop. That's it. Okay. Another right-hand drive vehicle. Stop her right there. Let's see what we've got. We got a 1979 Triumph Domolite Sprint, and it's owned by Rusty and Jennifer Blackwell. What city are you folks from? Jackson. I live right next door. I live in Brooklyn. I used to live in Manchester. Okay, tell us about this car.
This
Oh, what a
this is a
nice dog.
Triumph sedan made by the same company that just made that TR3. These were
What kind
considered
of dog is he?
relatively high-performance
What kind
sedans.
of dog is he?
They're building on Triumph's sporting image. This one, I believe, this one has the double overhead cam engine, single overhead cam engine. Yep, and was quite a high-performance car. It was basically intended to kind of compete with like a BMW 1600 or a 2002, and they were popular in England, but they never really caught on other parts of the world. You see, it's a right-hand drive car, which I'm sure most of them were. Anyhow, very, very unusual. I'm glad we have it.
A Spitfire. Let's get him up here. Good. Right there. Let's see what we've got. A 1980 Triumph Spitfire 15. What does the Q0 stand for? Oh, you didn't add that. It's a 1500, period. Ah, it was a typo. Okay. This is Mark Stratton from Northville. It's a cute little car, Mark. Tell us about Mark's car.
Huh? No, I'll tell you about it. Okay, or I'll try to tell you about it. Yeah, Triumph was very successful with their TR cars, the TR3, the 4, and the 6, and eventually the TR7, TR8. But they felt they needed a smaller sports car. They had been making a small sedan called the Triumph Herald, and they decided to use basically the platform of the Triumph Herald to shorten it and make it into these Triumph Spitfire sport cars, which they named after the famous World War II fighter plane. It has an independent rear suspension. It has, initially they all had 4-cylinder engines. Eventually, there were versions of this car with a hardtop fastback that had 6-cylinder engines. I believe this one's a 4-cylinder engine still. And very, again, innovative, very sporty cars, very light, very small, and they complemented the larger Triumph sports cars for a long time. Eventually, Triumph, like most of the other British car companies, fell on hard times, and the lineage after that is complicated and difficult. But this was a car that was sold here in relatively large numbers for sports cars. And 127, that's a lot. And near the end of the line, they had to add these big bumpers on it. They look kind of outsized for the size of the car, but I guess they did the job. So, anyhow, glad you brought it.
Okay, let's get this little Crosley up here. Both of them, both Crosleys. Come on. That's good, right there, dear. Stop it right there. This young lady was in the old French car with earlier that came by. She said, "You're going to see me again." Well, here she is. She's got a car of her own here. Let's see what she's got. A 1941 Crosley covered wagon. Jackie Grace from Westland. How many years have you owned this car? Just a couple? How, do you take it out a lot? You took it to the Motor Muster at Greenfield Village. Very good. Tell us about, well, wait a minute. We'll get this one here too. We've got a 1950 Crosley. What's the CO stand for? CD. Another typo. It says CO on your car. It's a convertible, and this is Rich Winerski. Okay, and you're from Plymouth. You've come here several times with this car. Umpteen times. This is a great little car. Tell us about these two Crosleys.
So Pal Crosley was a very successful radio manufacturer in the United States. He had the first low-cost radio, and he was the largest manufacturer of radios by 1922. He also created WLW radio station in Cincinnati with 500,000 watts, which greatly exceeded anybody else's radio station wattage, so you could hear it literally everywhere. In April of '39, he introduced this Crosley automobile at the Indianapolis Speedway, and then at the New York City's World Fair as the car of tomorrow. It was on an 80-inch wheelbase, 120 inches long. It used a 15 horsepower, 2-cylinder Waukesha engine. It had cable brakes. It was very Spartan. It had no sound insulation. There were no U-joints on the first cars, and the seats were fabric stretched over two frames. And initially it was sold through large department stores. It was most famous for Cannonball Baker, who used to do coast-to-coast runs, doing a 6,500-mile run and getting 50 miles per gallon. In 1941, it did get re-engineered. It added U-joints, a little bit more horsepower, and larger bearings and better lubrication, and they sold about 2,300 units that year.
Wasn't Powell Crossley 6'7" tall?
He was extremely tall, and somehow he fitted all these cars, but we won't look to see how he did it.
A lot of leg growth, I bet.
So the first one is called the covered wagon, and it's actually a soft top station wagon, and this was the version that Cannonball apparently took the cross country on his record run. They also had sedans and convertibles. The little red guy here to the right is a CD convertible. The CD was introduced in 1949 with a very boxy front end. They had re-engineered the car after the war to an envelope body, and it came out as the CC, migrated to the CD when they came out with a boxy front end. They built 478 convertibles in total in 1950. Their total volume was down to 6,800 units. In 1952, the company went out of business. It was sold to Aerojet, and Aerojet's actually still in business as a defense contractor.
I apologize to this lady. She was kind enough to bring her car, and somehow in the shuffle, we didn't get her a certificate printed up. She won best in her class. Give her a round of applause.
Yay!
You're beautiful. I'm old enough to be your granddad. I'm telling you, you are a gorgeous young lady. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Thank you for bringing your car. All right, bring this thing up here. Come on. Beautiful old car, whatever it is. I'm about to find out, I guess. Come on, bring her up here. A Rio. Good Lord. Stop right there. Perfect. What a gorgeous old car. This is a 1929 Rio Flying Cloud Sports Coupe, and Bill Reed from Canton. Have you been here before, Bill? Many times. I thought so. Tell us about Bill's car.
So Rio was a Lansing-based company. The REO stands for the initials of Ransom E. Olds, who had started Oldsmobile in 1897. He actually left Oldsmobile, or Olds Motor Works, over a policy dispute because he wanted to keep the low-priced curved dash Olds, whereas management of Olds wanted to make larger, more expensive cars. He left in January of 04, formed the Rio Corporation. First car was completed at the end of 04. In 1909, they introduced a new four-cylinder model with 35 horsepower, and they entered the commercial field in 1908, which would prove to be a very fortunate move on their part. In 1920, they introduced the T6, which lasted through most of the 20s with an F-head 50 horsepower engine. In 1927, the Flying Cloud was introduced. This is an example of that. On a 121-inch wheelbase, 65 horsepower, 7 main bearing I6 with hydraulic brakes and all new styling. In 1929, which is the year of this Flying Cloud, they had a Flying Cloud Mate, which was on a 115-inch wheelbase, 65 horsepower, and a Flying Cloud Master, 80 horsepower on 121-inch wheelbase. Rio continued to build cars through the Depression, but sales dramatically crashed in the mid-30s. They came out with a self-shifter in 1933, which was a rudimentary automatic, but not extremely successful. In 1936, they exited the car business and stayed with trucks thereafter. In the mid-50s, they were purchased by White Truck Corporation, which had also purchased Diamond T in that time frame. Eventually, Rio and Diamond T were merged to form Diamond Rio, and they built trucks in Lansing through 1975.
Okay, let's get this red Rambler up here. Come on, bring him up. Come on, right up here. That's good. We got a 59 Rambler, AMC Rambler sedan. This is Bill Hansen. Bill, I'm trying to, the print is so small. Oh, you're from Dexter. Okay. Yep. My dad had a 60. I loved the seats that folded down and made into beds. Go ahead.
So American Motors was formed in 1954 with the merger of Nash and Hudson. They very quickly migrated to Nash body cells and production in Kenosha, with the Hudsons adopting that platform and that manufacturing footprint. 1956 they came out with an all-new Rambler on 108-inch wheelbase, and in 1958 they facelifted it to have a more conventional front-end design, fins which were de rigueur in the late 50s. This 1959 would be an example of that update. Romney bet the farm on the Rambler for 1958. He exited Nash and Hudson as brands. He made the Nash ambassador a Rambler ambassador at that point. And it paid off. They did 162,000 units in 58, and they were the only car company to increase both volume and share in 1958, which was quite an accomplishment. 59 was their second big year, which is this year. It had a revised door, new trim, and they had their sales go up to 374,000 units that year. So the car was doing quite well. They made $60 million in profit that year, which exceeded greatly anything either Nash or Hudson had done as independents before that. And in 60 they went up to 458,000. That time frame from 59 to 64 was AMC's golden time, and unfortunately it proved all too short.
Pull ahead, sir. Thank you for bringing it. Okay, come on, let's get this Metropolitan up here. Go ahead and stop it right there. That way we'll let the people in the bleachers get a good look. This is a 60 AMC Metropolitan convertible, Scott Romano from Royal Oak. How many years have you owned this? Your grandfather bought it for you when you were 12. He's even got the picture, pictures from the paper. How old are you now? 64. Wow. Tell us about his car.
So the Metropolitan was a product of Nash Motor Company. In 1950, George Mason went around the country with a car concept called the NK1, which was a very early prototype of this car, and got customer feedback, which resulted in a much larger engine, although still small, 1.3 liters at the time, other changes to the car, and he introduced the car as the Metropolitan in 1954. When they merged with Hudson in 54, they also created a Hudson version of the Metropolitan, which was the same except for the grille emblem, and they continued those through 1956. Starting in 57, it was just the plain Metropolitan, and this one has has all the features of the later models. In 59, they adopted vent windows in the front doors, and they adopted a separate opening rear trunk, because until then you had to put all your things in the luggage compartment through the back seat. So this was the ultimate version of the Metropolitan, if you will. Their peak sales were 1959, sold 15,000 units that year. The leftovers were sold through 1960. They actually stopped production around 1960, still had enough in inventory to merchandise them through 1962. And over the years it was offered, they actually sold 95,000 in the United States. So it was a pretty popular car as a second vehicle for a number of households.
Okay, let's bring this little convertible up. You can stop right there. Let's see your window card, sir. Okay. 62 AMC Rambler 400 American convertible. Steve Rothenberg from Farmington Hills. What does this car weigh? 2,600 pounds. Probably With you in it, okay. Go ahead, guys.
So this is a car platform underneath that had 9 lives, pretty much. In 1950, Nash came out with the compact Rambler and did pretty well in 50, 51, 52. 53, they did a change to it, lowered the height of the hood, squared up the back end, and that car continued with some visual updates through 55. In 1958, George Romney reintroduced it as the Rambler American and basically took the 55, opened up the rear wheels, had a two-door sedan, and sold a lot of them in 58, 59, and 60. In 61, they rebodied it and made it a much squarer looking car, as you can see here. And they also added a new convertible for the first time. For 62, they had a deluxe custom and 400 lineup, 400 being the top, with a new grille. And they also had something called an E-stick, which had an automatic clutch with a manual shift. They also had dual circuit brakes, which was well in advance of the FMVSS regulations that came in around 1967. And this car really held down the fort, if you will, for American Motor profits for a number of years, because the basic investment in it had been paid off so many years before. This body continued through 1963 model year, and then in 1964 they had an all-new Rambler American.
Okay, come on, bring this Javelin up here. Stop it right there. What a great looking little car. This is absolutely great. Where's your window card? Doesn't matter. He's been coming here for 20 years, and this is a 70 AMC Javelin SST two-door. Bob Lucas from Farmington, Michigan. Bob, the judges thought you had the finest AMC car here, so congratulations. Give him a round of applause, and we'll let the fellas tell you folks about it.
So the Javelin was American Motors' entry into the pony car segment pioneered by Mustang. It was introduced in 1968, came on a 106-inch wheelbase, and they did 55,000 units the first year, which was a pretty good performance for a new entry. 1970, which is the year of this car, it had a minor freshening. The grille was made full width. There were also revisions to the tail lamps and trim. Volume was down to about 30,000 units, of which 19,000 were SST V8s, similar to this car. The series lineup that year was the base, the SST Trans Am, and the SST Mark Donahue. And a bit of interest regarding the SST nomenclature. That had begun in 1967 and was expanded across the AMC lineup in 1968. And SST at that time was getting a lot of discussion in the national press regarding the idea of supersonic transport, which was an initiative that had been undertaken in that time frame by industry and the government. SSTs never showed up in commercial flight except for the French Concorde, but AMC sold plenty of SSTs.
You can pull her ahead. Thank you. Give this man a round of applause. Tell Joe you met a good guy. Come on, bring this thing up here. Okay, stop it right there. Now this guy has been here so many times, we ought to give him an award just for showing up the way he does. But Sheldon Rohde has got this AMX Hornet sedan. It's a 74. He's from Roanoke, Indiana, and this car is very low mileage, correct? 20,000 actual miles on this car. And he sold these cars when this car was new. Go ahead, guys.
So the AMC Hornet was introduced in 1970. It was a replacement for the Rambler American, which had come out on a prior iteration that ran between 64 and 69. When it came out, it was available in a two-door or a four-door sedan, as shown here. They added a Sportabout station wagon in 1971, which proved to be extremely popular. They added a three-door hatchback in 1973. In 1972, they had one of the first designer edition cars that hit the American public. It was the Gucci Sportabout, which had 4 colors, very unique interior trim, exterior badging. In 1974, which is the year of this vehicle, there was a new grille, 5-mile-an-hour bumpers, both front and rear, new tail lamps, and new exterior trim. 232 straight 6 was standard. You could get a 304 or a 360 V8 optional. By this time, the Hornet platform was extremely important to AMC. They sold 145,000 Hornets, and they also sold 117,000 Gremlins off the same platform out of 429,000 total. So this was AMC's core product, and it's where they really leveraged volume to sustain the company.
Thanks, Charlie. Go ahead and pull it out. Okay, come on guys, bring them up here. Keep going a little more. That's good right there. Stop it right there. Okay, this is a 76 Pacer DL. This is Jim Crichton from Windsor, Ontario. And we were talking earlier. He's done a lot to this car. It looks a lot shinier than it first did, doesn't it? Tell us about Jim's car.
So you're looking at what AMC referred to as the first wide small car, which was their advertising tagline when this came out in mid-1975. The car was originally planned to have the Wankel engine in it. GM was going to get into a Wankel engine production, and they were quite close to producing engines. But when the fuel crisis hit in 1973, everybody understood that the fuel inefficiency of the Wankel, even though it was a very powerful engine for its size, it still didn't get very good fuel economy. So GM decided against the Wankel engine going into production, and AMC was forced into putting their existing straight 6-cylinder engines into this car. Unfortunately, because of the width of the car and the extreme amount of glass area in it, it's an extremely heavy car for its size, and as a consequence, the fuel economy wasn't so hot, and people soon became aware that while it was a compact car, it really wasn't capable of delivering compact car fuel economy.
Tell them about the difference in the door sizes.
The door sizes are longer between the two sides. The passenger is a bit longer to permit ingress-egress to the rear seat. The driver's door commensurately a bit shorter. In '76, they sold 117,000 of these, which was a good portion of the 283,000 that AMC did. But after that, the volume really declined quickly. They did a freshening later on with a higher grille. They put the 304 V8 in it. They introduced the station wagon. But nonetheless, by the time 1980 rolled around, it was the end of the Pacer and the end of quite a unique car.
Okay, let's get this little blue Corvair up here. Stop right there. Stop that van right there. Stop your truck. I want that red convertible to come around you and get behind this one. You and the red convertible pull around the van and bring it up here. Come on, you can do it. You can drive a semi through there. I want to get these two similar body cars together. Come on. You and the blue convertible, bring yours up too. Come on, get it up here. We don't bite. That's it. Good. Stop. Stop, stop. Good. All right. Now, let's get the show on the road. We got a 1963 Monza. And this is Pete Kohler from Farmington Hills. This is unrestored with 19,600 original miles on it. And this little red convertible is just stunning. It is really a neat car. This is a 63 Spider, and this is Carrie. Pronounce your last name for me. Bourne. Okay, and you're from Birmingham, Michigan. Okay, we'll talk about these two similar bodied ones first.
Okay, so these are the Chevrolet Corvair, which was one of the 3 compacts introduced for 1960. The other 2 being the Ford Falcon and Chrysler's Valiant. It was envisioned as the American Volkswagen. It was badged as a Holden during prototype development and tooling orders so that nobody would understand it was a Chevrolet product. Rather unconventional, it was outsold badly by Falcon and led to the Chevy 2 being introduced. The first ones were 80 horsepower, later 95 horsepower, six-cylinder horizontally opposed all aluminum engine with swing axles. In 1960, mid-60, they came out with a coupe version. The first were just four doors. In 1961, they introduced the Lakewood station wagon, which lasted for 2 model years until 1962. Also in 1962, they came out with the Spider, which was a turbocharged version of the car, 150 horsepower, 210 pound-feet of torque, which was a comprehensive performance package for 1962. In 63, they actually simplified the package a bit, made some of the content like the metallic brakes, heavy-duty suspension as separate options, but the other content on the Spiders included engine bright work, badging on the outside, full instrumentation, and they sold 7,400 Spider convertibles in 63. 1962, their volume peaked in 292,000 cars, went down to 254,000 for 1963. This generation continued through 64 and then went into a Gen 2 in 65, which we'll talk about next.
Okay, guys, pull them ahead. Okay, let's get these two similar bodied convertibles up here next. Stop right there. You're good. All right, let's see your window card. A 1965 Monza convertible. John O'Leary from West Bloomfield. John, you've been here before. I guess so. Good to see you. Okay, let's see what we got behind John's car. We got a 67 Monza. 67 was the last year produced, right? Oh, 69. Okay. And Mark Colburn is from Galion, Ohio. Did you drive this car here? You did. You've owned it since 71. Good man. Tell us about these two cars.
So the Gen 2 Corvair was introduced for 1965, and by anybody's estimation, it was a visually stunning car, particularly in two-door hardtop form. Just a very well-designed car, and it had important mechanical upgrades as well. The swing axle rear suspension was replaced with a 4-link independent rear suspension. The car was 2 to 3 inches longer and wider, had bigger brakes. The body style lineup was a 2-door hardtop, a 4-door hardtop, which was quite unique for the compact segment, as well as a convertible. The model lineup was 500 at the low end, Monza in the middle, and Corsa, a new high-performance series at the top end. Had 4 engine offerings, 95, 110 horsepower, a new 140 horsepower 4-carburetor engine, and the 180 horsepower turbo. 65 was a good year for the Corvair line, 235,000 units, but it quickly declined, even though it was such a nice car, because of the image that Corvair had generated, plus the success of the Mustang in that segment. The convertibles did pretty well in 65. There were 26,000 Monzas, 8,000 Corsas. In 67, the year over there to the right, 2,000, so the convertible volume dropped quite a bit. 66 in between might be considered the ultimate year Corvair. They added synchromesh on the first year of the 3-speed manual. It had a chin spoiler, but the volume had gone from 235 down to 104, so you can see how quickly the Corvair volume declined in that time frame.
Ralph Nader didn't help.
No, he didn't.
Okay.
69 was the last year, 6,000 units produced.
Go ahead, sir. Let's get these two Corvair trucks, well, the truck and the van. Let's get those up here. That's good. That's perfect. Okay, we got a 61 Corvair ramp side, and Mike Anstein and Livonia. Mike, have you had this car here before? Can you show the folks, can you open the door so that they can see what it looks like when you open the door up on this thing? I know it is, but they'll be able
That's good.
stand up and you'll see the whole side of this thing opens up. Check that out. It goes
cool.
down so you can drive stuff up on it, a lawnmower or whatever the case might be, carry stuff up into it easier. And we'll move, thank you. We're going to move back a little bit further and we'll get this one here too while we're at it. This is a 63 Corvair 95 van, and this is Raven Hand from Clarkston, Michigan. And what does it say on the side? Detroit Area Corvair Club. How long have you owned this car?
We've got it in 2020.
You've had it in about 3 years. Okay, tell us about these cars, guys.
So just as the passenger car versions were the American VW, so were these commercial versions emulating the microbus. This was introduced for 1961 in 3 versions. There was a Greenbrier passenger van with windows. There was a Core van, which is the panel truck version shown to the right there, and there was the ramp side pickup here. All were built on a 108-inch wheelbase. They had the 14-inch wheels and tires, which provided load carrying capacity that the regular Corvair wheels and tires wouldn't have offered. They did have the same engines, though, as the regular Corvairs. Over the time of these vehicles, they produced 58,000 Greenbriers and 69,000 vans and ramp sides.
Good show.
The last year for them in commercial form was 1964. 1965, they did build about 1,800 Greenbrier passenger vans, pretty much leftover production since the regular Corvair had migrated to Gen 2, and it was a problem for the plant to continue producing the prior generation commercial vans.
Thank you for bringing Give this man a round of applause because the judges thought he had the best Corvair van here, so congratulate him. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for supporting the museum.
The only Corvair van.
Yes. You didn't mention that.
Okay, we're going to move into the Hudson-Essex-Terraplane class. Oh, this car is just gorgeous. God, this thing is just beautiful.
Wow.
That's good right there. A 1929, and I recognize the driver. This is a Hudson-Essex boattail, and Al Schultz is not the driver. I know who the driver is. I want you to tell the folks who the driver is.
Ted Sowers, my wife Kayleen.
Ed is one of the biggest supporters of our museum, has been since day one, was friends with Jack Miller. He's been a big supporter of this show. He's had several of his own cars on display in our museum building. Just a great guy, all-around good guy. Give Ed a round of applause.
Where do they go to?
We'll give one for you two for putting up with it.
Yeah, but what's the name of your thing on YouTube?
Okay, tell us. Go ahead, Bob.
Hudson was an old company founded in 1909 by Lord Chapin and Howard Coffin. And they had backing from Chapin's uncle,
What you got last year, right?
J.L. Hudson. And that's why they named the car the Hudson instead of naming it after either Chapin or Coffin. They early cars were quite racy. We have a very early car, a 1909 Hudson, one of the very first in our museum, and it's worth going down and take a look if you haven't seen it. Hudson was basically, among other things, created the first fully counterbalanced crankshaft 6-cylinder engine, which is a huge advance, allowed them to make a lot more power, a lot more RPM. 1919, Hudson decided they needed a smaller car, and so they created the Essex. And among other things, the Essex was the first to make a really low-priced, practical closed car. Hudson sold a lot of these cars. This 1929 Essex in front of us is the second generation of Essex, has a 6-cylinder engine, about 160 cubic inches, and it's a particularly sporty version of the Essex. They didn't make many of these boat-tail speedsters, but it's quite a racy car, and it carried on the Hudson tradition of performance and power and just general sportiness.
It's beautiful, and so the judge thought it was too. So give them a round of applause because they thought it was the best in its class.
Beautiful
You
car.
pull her ahead. Thank you. Okay. Stop it right there. We got a 1942 Hudson Super 6. This is Joe Schmuck from Clinton Township, Michigan. Is this original paint on this car? Okay, this was repainted, but in the original color. Okay, tell us about Joe's car, guys.
Well, 1937, Hudson had all new bodies. They were much wider, and especially that the roof was wider. They advertised the 55-inch width by giving dealers and other people a 55-inch yardstick, which you could lay on the front seat only in a Hudson or a Terraplane. 1942, they refreshed this body a lot, and one of the things they did that made this kind of interesting is cars were getting away from having running boards. So Hudson didn't want to make a whole new car. They added panels to the bottom of the doors to cover the running boards. If you was to open the door, you'd see there's running boards underneath there. Yeah.
Watch your door fall off.
Yep, see, there's the running board. But it added a stylish touch to the older body. And 1942 was a short year for Hudson, so after the war they came back with essentially the same body with different grille trims. This has got the 6-cylinder engine, 212 cubic inch engine they used a long time, started I believe in 34, and they used it through 1947 in their cars. Lots and lots of Hudsons had the 212 cubic inch engine. This particular Hudson won an award last year at the Hudson National Meet, won the Bill Albright Award for Hudson restoration. As you can see, it's restored just beautifully. Now, a very nice Hudson, these were very successful cars for Hudson.
Go ahead and pull her head for me, sir. Thank you for bringing it. Let's get this good-looking convertible up here.
Before it rains.
We're going to beat the rain, folks. Stop right there. A 1954 Hudson convertible, Neil Renner from what city? Troy, Ohio. Did you drive this car up here? You did. You've driven this car 140,000 miles. Give this man a round of applause just for that alone. Tell us about his car.
So in 1948, Hudson came out with the car is probably best known for, the step-down Hudson. It had a unitized perimeter frame body. You step down into the seats. The overall height of the car was 60 inches when most other cars were of the range of 64 to 66 inches. It had handling and ride capabilities that exceeded any other car. 1951, they introduced the 308 cubic inch version of their new straight 6L head engine for the Hornet, and that Hornet went on to dominate NASCAR from 1952 to 1954, and that was when NASCAR was literally taking a showroom stock car off the showroom floor and racing it. These cars were tremendously capable, but as time passed, they became old looking because they didn't change the design sufficiently between 49 and 53. For 54, they finally did a major change on the basic structure. It was the first time they had a one-piece windshield, a much wider grille ensemble. They squared up the rear of the car. Prior to that, it had a very tapered bar soap look to it. This one squared it up. They had power steering and power brakes for the first time in 1954. Some cars had the continuing GM Hydromatic. Others had the Borg-Warner automatic because of GM Hydromatic shortages due to the fire in Livonia. This is the last of the Hudson convertibles. It was notable for a very wide windshield header, which concealed the radio antenna and the sun visors. They promoted it for safety. Hard to say whether it was safer or not. It also is notable for having a very flush top stack when the convertible top is down. You can notice that the top is actually below the level of the belt line, which was a very unique visual aesthetic at that time frame. Quite a car, quite an end to a notable history for Hudson in 1954, at least in terms of Detroit production. 55 through 7, they were produced by AMC on the AMC body shell, but in 55 and 56, you could still get the 308 straight 6 from Hudson in a 55 and 56 Nash. And not too many people know this, 1957, there were 6-cylinder Hudson export cars, a handful of them, but there were still 57 Hudsons with 6-cylinder engines in them for the export market.
This old truck that's coming up belongs to a good friend of mine, Mary Anzalone from Manchester, Michigan. Mary's husband, Bob, was one of the foremost automotive car restorers in the United States. I mean, he restored Duesenbergs and, I mean, everything from a GTO to a Corvair to a Duesenberg. Bob did them all. And he had the biggest barn probably in the state of Michigan and converted it into an automotive restoration facility. He had his own machine shop. A lot of the times he made his own parts. He was extremely, extremely, extremely talented and just a great guy. And Mary has got her truck here. I've seen this truck a million times. It's a great old truck. And Mary's got her chauffeur driving her today. But before we go too much further, Mary, they thought you had the best truck here, so congratulations. Give her a round of applause. It's a 1935 Stewart, and it just went down in here where the glass is. You'll have to take that baby apart to get to it. But at any rate, a little added insulation. Tell them about Mary's truck.
Oh, Stewart truck is very unusual to see. These were made in Buffalo, New York, and they were sort of a regional, they had a regional sort of market. They were very popular in Western New York and in that part of the country. So it's very unusual to see one here. They started in 1912 and basically made steadily produced trucks until 1942. This is a Model 40. And it's got a Waukesha 4-cylinder engine, 3-speed transmission, got hydraulic brakes, which not all trucks had. He's making the signal like it's got a 6-speed.
It's a six-cylinder engine, I think is what he's trying to tell you.
6-cylinder engine, Waukesha engine? Okay, well, like I say, that these are very rare trucks and that not all that much is well known about them. But a fine example, and they had a great reputation and for making durable and stylish trucks.
This is really a pretty old truck. I don't mean pretty old, I mean it's pretty. So stop right there. A 1946 International K2, and this is Lou Hayes from West Bloomfield. The paint on this sure didn't come this way from the factory. I know better. Oh, it's beautiful. Tell us about Lou's truck.
International Harvester was an old company, started making farm equipment, and eventually they got into making trucks in the early part of the century, made several different styles. They basically, by the 30s, they were making, and then into the 40s, they're making every size truck, from pickup trucks to tractor trailers. This one is a K2, which is a 3/4 ton pickup. It's next to the lightest one they made. It was a new body in 1940, but 1946 it still looked good and it looked modern. It is a very handsome truck. It carries International's own engine called a Green Diamond engine, 6-cylinder, 214 cubic inches, and it's very stylish and very competitive, more than competitive with trucks from other manufacturers. They were quite successful in this market for quite a while.
get the fire trucks up here, guys. Come on. Thank you. Let's see the window card for this bad boy. All right. We've got a 1927 American LaFrance pumper. It's 1,000 GPM. It's from the Firehouse Museum up the street. And I'm having a senior moment.
Formerly from Ann Arbor.
Formerly from Ann Arbor. And give the crowd your full name.
Jim Adams.
Jim Adams not only is involved with old fire trucks, he's the sound man that sets all of this equipment up for us every single year. He's been doing it for 40 some years. Give him a round of applause, because without him, we would not function.
Sure.
So he is great. He's been really, really good to us. Come on, get this other one up here. We'll just introduce them, and then one at a time, I'll let the automotive historians describe them to you folks. This is a familiar face. Let's see your placard, because I sure don't know what the heck this thing is. It's a 1947 Rio C19B fire truck. Dave Egler and his brother have been big supporters of our museum. They're very active at the Firehouse Museum. Washtenaw County Sheriff's deputies retired. Give him a round of applause just for that alone. Okay, tell us about the first one.
This is an American LaFrance. They were the oldest fire company, engine company in America. They started making horse-drawn fire equipment and stuff like that, other things. They finally got into making motorized fire trucks in 1907, and they kind of dominated the market for those for a long time. They were, and they continued well into the 1960s. Making fire trucks. Some of their later fire trucks with the mid-engine were quite revolutionary and radical, and in fact are most people's vision of what a fire truck is. This one is 1927. It carries a 6-cylinder engine that American LaFrance made. It's a 12-cylinder engine. Okay, so it's 2 6-cylinder engines. And yeah, so it's got a big engine, a lot of power, and this came from Ann Arbor. I've lived in Ann Arbor a long time, and I never saw this. They must have had it pretty well hidden away.
As old as you are, you should have.
Yeah, well, they didn't.
All right, go ahead. Pull her away. Bob, take it away.
Okay, this is a Rio, 1947 Rio C19B. Rio was started by Ransom E. Olds after they more or less kicked him out of the Oldsmobile company. Wanted to start a new company, but they wouldn't let him use his name. So they used his initials, R-E-O, Ransom E. Olds. And they made both cars and trucks for a long time. In the mid-30s, they got out of making cars and concentrated on trucks. And they made a huge variety of trucks, from smaller, slightly larger than pickup truck sizes, right up to the biggest over-the-road haulers. And like I say, this one is quite a stylish truck. It's a 47, and I don't remember the details quite. But it carries, I believe it carries Rio's own engine.
Let me hand the microphone to him, and you can tell the crowd about the truck.
Okay, so the truck is, it's a Rio chassis, and it does have the Gold Comet engine in it, 6-cylinder engine in it. The chassis was bought by the Leland Volunteer Fire Department in 1947, and then they built the fire truck themselves in a garage over the course of a year. So they added the tank and the equipment compartments and the pump on the front, and this ran in service for Leland, my hometown, for almost 30 years.
Let's give him a round of applause. This is a great truck. Thanks for bringing it. Don't go anywhere, folks. Just stay where you're at. For those of you folks in the bleachers, and for those of you folks out in the field, let's give our two automotive historians a round of applause.
Yay.
We are so very, very fortunate to have these gentlemen here do what they do. They are just a treasure trove of information, and we couldn't do it without them. This is our 25th annual show, and as you folks know, it's our single biggest fundraiser for the museum. So just by your being here today, you're helping us keep the doors open and do what we do. So give yourselves a round of applause. And just for the sake of being courteous, let's give everybody that brought a car here today a round of applause. This show originated with Jack Miller and Randy Mason just saying, you know, we should have a car show, that cars that are no longer made. And that's how it started. And of course, Jack is no longer with us, neither is Randy. But they were great guys and they had a vision. You're seeing their vision. And because of their vision, we help keep the museum funded. So we hope to see you back next year. Thank you for being here. I'm Ron Pinsonald. I've been doing it for 25 years. I love it. It's a great show. Jack and I grew up together, and Jack might have been crusty, but he had a heart of gold. So at any rate, his vision's here, and we'll see you folks next year. You're part of that vision. Thank you.